5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Hey, I think I'm already on. There I am. I transitioned myself already on. Haha, there it is. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Jacob Clifford. I am here to help you learn economics. I want to thank all of you for watching this special live stream bonus videos that I'm making. It's actually not just a video. This is an interactive review where I get to help you understand the key graphs, key concepts, and get ready for the big AP tests that are coming this week. I hope you did already well on your other AP tests last week and that you're doing a great job. If you've been to my other live streams, you know how this works. I got a dog coming in here. Hey, Maple, how are you? Say hi to the people. Can you see him? Can you see her? Hey, up here. Oh, no. Okay, fine. Anyways, so I hope you guys are doing well. First things first, let me know how I'm doing on the audio. So audio is always the trick to make sure this thing is working the way it needs to work. So right now, let me know audio-wise if you can hear me. Also, let me know what city and state you're in. We're going to have a small group to start at the beginning, but it's going to get more and more people as time goes on. So right now, we only have 11 people in, but that's okay. Hi, Maple! That's right. You guys are funny. Audio is great. Thank you so much, Joseph. I appreciate it. Yes, Maple, my wife's Canadian. That's why we have the dog, and the dog's name is Maple. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start off by doing microeconomics for the first, I don't know, I want to say half, but we'll see. So those of you who showed up for macro, sorry, we're going to start off with micro. By the way, people are coming in saying where they're from. Woodlands, great, this is awesome. Another Woodlands person, Ontario, Canada, Long Island, New York. So glad you guys are here. Princeton, New Jersey. Awesome. Thank you so much. Seriously, thank you so much for getting the Ultimate Review Packet. And thank you for being here to help me help you review. So we're going to do something weird. I've never done it before. I have no idea if this is going to work. So it might fall flat on its face, but that's okay. I want you to call me. What? Yeah. So I'm going to put you on my screen, and we'll see if this actually works running this thing all at the same time. So what I want you to do is I want you, you're going to call me on FaceTime. So get your phone out. A couple of rules, of course. Number one here. Let's get Maple out of here real quick. Give me 2 seconds. Maple, come here. Come here. Come on. Up, up, up. Up, up. Here you go. Go. Let's go, Mapes. And I'm back. Okay. So you're going to call me on a FaceTime. First person that gets in gets to ask a question. A couple of rules. Number one, please don't be naked or say vulgar things or something weird because this is live. You know, let's try to get the job done. That's the goal. Let's be efficient with our time. Let's not be inside our production possibilities curve. Have a question, have a plan, and you know, of course, hopefully you get a chance to talk to me, which would be awesome. But still, how do you call me? Well, it's on my email. My email is info@acdcleadership.com. That's how you're going to connect me and connect with my FaceTime. So I'll say it again. It's info@acdcleadership.com. So I'll write that down in case people didn't hear me. I'm hoping this will work at the same time. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But it is info@acdcleadership.com. First person to call in via FaceTime, I will get you up on the screen. You can ask me some questions and we'll go from there. People are saying they're from Cape Cod, Pittsburgh, Chicago, Greensboro, North Carolina, DC. Awesome. This is great. Yeah, so all I'm doing is waiting here. Seriously, I'm straight up waiting right now for one of you. Now, if you're thinking like, oh, I don't know if I have any questions to ask, or if I'm, you know, I'm not dressed up and all my makeup on, who cares? Let's just do this. Someone call in. First of all, because I want to make sure it works at the very least. I mean, I have no idea if this is even going to work in the first place. In fact, let me know in the comments. If it turns out in the comments that you're like, it's not working, or you tried it several times and you're not getting through, let me know. Maybe FaceTime doesn't work at the same time as the other programs I have on. Again, it is info@acdcleadership.com. That is what you are calling me on FaceTime, and we'll go from there. FaceTime it up. All right. Who's going to be the first caller? Matthew Yan asked a good question. Let's find out. I mean, what else do you want me to do? I can just sit here and talk about economics, but that doesn't make any sense. If you don't want to call in, that's fine. How about those of you who, you know, if you have a question, you can text me a question. Over here to my right, I have, you know, the chat feed coming in. So if you want to ask a question, you can do that as well. Yep. All right. Here we are. So far, not so good. It's okay. That's all right. I'm not upset. I'm just waiting. I just want somebody to do it. Somebody says they don't have an Apple device. Yeah. Sorry, Amy. Ben, doing the micro exam at 1. I don't care. I'll answer a macro question. I don't care as long as I'm being helpful and useful. Hi, big fan of your videos. Do your summary videos capture every concept so will be tested in the exam? Thank you so much for that question. That's a good one. Does the summary videos cover almost all the big, I mean, they cover all the big concepts, my summary videos. They don't cover every single concept, partially because, you know, there's only so much you can say as opposed to do. So there's a certain amount of things you have to be able to do. I talk about, you know, the cost curves and stuff, but I'm not mentioning like other little details like, well, don't forget when, you know, this output's being produced and the fixed costs get smaller. So yes, the concepts are all there, but it doesn't mean you have to do them all. You have to do practice questions to make sure you can actually do them all. It's a good question. Thank you. We can do the resource market. Ha ha ha, LOL. Do you think AP micro or macro is more difficult? Another good question. Okay, Joseph or Yosef. The micro exam last year had a higher, it was easier to pass it. So if you got 50% or 51%, you end up getting a 3 on the micro test. Ultimately, it kind of comes down to your teacher and how much you study. Sometimes micro is easy for some people, especially if they're graph-minded, because there's a lot of graphs and they're all very similar. If you know them, you're fine. But macro feels a bit more like social science. So macroeconomics, except for the graph part, feels more like, you know, you're talking about concepts and money supply and inflation, and these concepts are more conceptual. Micro feels a little bit more like math, like kind of like geometry proof sort of feel. Mr. Clifford, thank you very much for doing this stream. Could you please graph the important graphs and explain each of them, please? I totally can. I want to do that, but only if somebody calls in. It is info@acdcleadership.com. It's also on my website, info@acdcleadership.com. I can go over every single graph. I can go over every single concept. Whatever you need, I can do it. And the reason why, don't forget, the reason I'm doing this is because you got the Ultimate Review Packet. So those of you, and you must have, hopefully, to get the Ultimate Review Packet, you didn't cheat or lie or steal it. But seriously, thank you so much. I want to help you guys, and I'll answer as many questions as you need. Again, we're going to try to focus on micro here for the first part. I will go over the key graphs. In fact, I'll start making a list of things that I need to cover for you guys. First one is key graphs, which I will definitely do, and we'll graph together. I want to make sure I'm using my time wisely, though, so I need your questions in. When you don't have an Apple device, I know, I don't either. When does money demand shift? That money demand is more of a macro. It's a macro concept. I'm going to focus on micro, at least for the first 30 minutes here. Let's try to get somebody in here for micro, and then I'll just go rogue. The thing is, I don't want people who are here for micro to feel like they're not getting what they wanted, because I said online on my video that we'll do micro for the first half and macro for the second half. So far, we've done nothing. We're just waiting around for someone to call me and ask a question. But I will cover some of these things. Difference between fair return, socially optimal, allocative efficiency. That is a great question, if I can pronounce your name. Difference between fair return, socially optimal, and allocative efficiency. I will totally cover that, I promise. So stick around. I promise to cover that for sure. And price definitely does not shift the curve. Again, I'll say it one more time, then I'll just start. I need somebody who has an Apple device to call me on FaceTime, info@acdcleadership.com. Somebody call me so I know this thing's actually working, or we'll have to do something else entirely. Other people are asking macro questions. We're not going to jump into macro for a little bit here. So here we go. Nothing in 3, 2, 1. Let's go cover some key graphs really quick. Since I'm here, let's go ahead and do it. First of all, I'm going to go into graph mode, which I now have the paper, and you can see me up in the left-hand corner. I am going to cover some of the key graphs. So question number 1 is, what's the key graphs of microeconomics? Again, if somebody's asked about loanable funds, that's macro. Yes, somebody is calling! Woo! All right. Accept. Hello, how are you?
Hi.
This is awesome! So let me switch you out here so everyone can see you. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So here we go. So what's your name?
I'm Bailey.
Hi, Bailey. Where are you from?
Cape Cod.
Cape Cod. Bailey from Cape Cod. Thank you so much for calling in. You can tell the awkwardness of it. I was just waiting for somebody to do it.
Yeah.
And now I got someone. I got Bailey from Cape Cod. This is great. Thank you. All right. Who's your teacher and what school are you from?
I go to Nauset Regional High School and I have Mr. Allen.
All right. Shout out to Mr. Allen. Perfect. Okay. What is your question?
I was wondering about the long run average total cost curve and what we would have to do with it on the test.
That is a great question. Thank you so much, Bailey. They don't ask many questions. The main concept you need to know is the idea of economies of scale. So I'm going to quiz you a little bit, if you don't mind. What is economies of scale? Do you know?
It's when costs are decreasing.
What kind of costs?
Input costs?
That's a good question. It's average costs are decreasing. So a great example I use in my classroom is I talk about scissors, which I don't have any. But if you think about any producer that produces anything, for example, I don't know, this right here, just randomly picking a product. So whoever, Febreze makes this, right? And to make a bunch of them, they've got to mass produce. And they're not just making one of them, they're making a boatload of them. I have no idea how much it actually costs. I don't know, $2, $3 or whatever this is. But if you made one, if I said, okay, Bailey, I want you to make one of these things, it would take you, I don't know, $10,000 to make one identical to this, right? Exactly the same. But they're producing so many, their total costs are huge, but their average cost is super small because of economies of scale. That's the idea of the long run, which is what you're talking about. Long run average total cost is falling as you produce more. That's the idea of economies of scale. Now the graph, and that's I think what you're trying to focus on, right? The graph is average total cost in the long run. So this is what I'm drawing, by the way. The long run average total cost. So what's it do as you produce more output? The long run average total cost. Do you know, Bailey?
Decreases.
Yeah, it falls, yeah. So it initially starts to fall, and as it goes down, and the reason why is when you're using mass production techniques, you can have your costs of the costs on average of each unit, it starts to go down, and then eventually levels off and stays flat, and then goes back up. Basically, to answer your question, this is the long run average total cost. This is the 3 stages of the long run average total cost curve. That's pretty much what you need to know for the AP test. Be able to know. So the AP test is a strategy game. So basically you figure, okay, what are they most likely to ask and how much time do I need to spend on that stuff to know it so I can move on to the other stuff. So if you know 1, 2, and 3, these 3 different stages, you'll get probably half the questions that refer to this graph. What are they called? Do you know? Without looking at your book?
Economies of scale, which is economies of scale, constant returns to scale, and just economies of scale.
You got it. So usually when they ask questions, diseconomies, when they ask questions at the AP test, it might just be understanding the labeling, but also understanding like just the general concept. For example, I'm going to draw, and I know you can't see it, but I'm going to switch. And you stay there, Bailey. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to switch over to graph mode real quick so I can show the rest of the viewers this, and you can watch as well. If I were to draw, let's say, here's demand, marginal revenue. Bailey, is this perfect competition? Yes or no?
I can't see it.
Oh, you can't see it. I've got it blocked. It's okay. The answer was no, and it's okay if you can't see it. I promise to show it up. Here, how about this? Okay, is that perfect competitive firm?
No.
How do you know?
Because it's a monopoly.
Or it could be what else?
I don't know.
It could, no, you're totally right. It's a monopoly. It could be monopolist competition as well, right? But it's definitely not a horizontal demand curve, so you know it's not perfect competition. So you're exactly right. Now, the AP test has asked and will continue to ask this a lot. This right here is a natural monopoly, the way that I've drawn it this way. I'm going to put it down for the audience so they can see really quick. Okay. All right, and then I'll hold it up for you as well. Okay. So I've got the demand, the marginal revenue, the marginal cost, and the average total cost. The way I drew it kind of is tricky, but that's okay. So here's the graph so you can see it. Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, people can't see it because my screen was off. Sorry, let's do that again. Here it is. Okay. There we go. Anyways, I want you to take a look. Do you know how to find socially optimal on this graph? Let me switch back to your, I'm gonna work with you This will be a lot easier for everyone to see, including yourself. Let me make this bigger. I'm working out the kinks, Bailey.
Okay.
All right. So just by looking at this graph, do you know where socially optimal is?
Where MR equals MC?
MR equals MC is profit maximizing. Yes, 100%. This is a quantity where monopoly or a monopoly maximizes profit, but that's not the same as socially optimal. Socially optimal is the idea that where society actually wants produced. So society wants where what? Do you have any idea?
I can't see some of the graph.
It's okay. My bad. I see what I'm doing. I see what I'm doing wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, how about that? Even if you don't look at the graph. Don't even look at the graph. Don't even look at the graph. Where is socially optimal? Even if you didn't even have a graph, you should, you know the concept of socially optimal. Socially optimal, I'll just tell you so you don't feel so uncomfortable because you're like, I didn't know you were going to ask me questions. It's where the marginal cost hits the demand curve, right? So where marginal cost, I'll write it on here, where marginal cost hits the demand, right? That's socially optimal. In other words, there's no dead weight loss if we produce this quantity. Are you with me? Mm-hmm. Now, I want you to look at this graph. This is super important. What's the ATC doing at that quantity? So if I go up to the ATC, is that ATC going up or going down?
Down.
If it's going down, that means I have economies of scale, right? So the AP test will ask you questions like, for a natural monopoly at quantity socially optimal, are they experiencing economies of scale? The answer is yes, because the average total cost is still going down. Now, this is a short run average total cost, but it's still, since it's going down, they're having economies of scale. In other words, they're using mass production techniques and their average costs are falling and their long run average costs are falling. Did that make any sense?
Yes.
Kind of. Do you have any second question for me while you're here? What book are you using, by the way, so people can see? Which one are you using?
Princeton Review.
Okay. Very cool. Has it been helpful?
Not as much as the packet.
Aha! Woo! You know exactly how to make me feel good. I appreciate that, Bailey. Thank you so much. You have any more questions?
I think I'm good.
Bailey, seriously, I mean this. I'm going to be doing this a whole lot more throughout my career. You are the very first one. I am going to give you a digital hug, whether you like it or not. Here it comes. That's for you. Thank you so much, Bailey, for being the first person to ever do this. This was awesome.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
That was so cool. So cool. Now, it probably wasn't that cool for you because you're like young and like hip and like know all this stuff and technology is great. But for me, I've never done this before. This is awesome. Thank you, Bailey. Okay. People are jumping in. I appreciate it. I love people who are jumping in. What are your questions? So if you have your Apple device, you can, people who just came in, there's several people who just came in, you can let me know right here, info@acdcleadership.com, right there. Go ahead and call in. Bailey had the guts to do so, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Bailey. Other people who have questions. Yeah, let's go do that question somebody asked earlier. They asked about the socially optimal. That's actually all related to the concept that we literally just did 2 seconds ago. Let's go to this graph and identify a few things here. So here we go. Back to the graph mode. This is the question I was showing Bailey. I was trying to show her at the quantity socially optimal, since the ATC is still falling, this firm, whether it's, it's a natural monopoly, has economies of scale. So to answer Bailey's question maybe a little better, she asked what kind of questions they ask about this. The first kind of question they're going to ask is kind of definition questions. Do you understand what economies of scale is? It has to do with long run average cost, not total cost, and the idea of diseconomies of scale, when your long run average total cost started going back up. The other kind of questions they're going to ask are possibly graph questions where you have to identify where it is, those 3 stages I showed you earlier, which looks like this. Right? These 3 stages of the economies of scale, which have horrible handwriting. And the other one is some sort of application like we just did, and I'm going to write application or application like we did on the graph, right? Like I showed you here. So that's the kind of so they'll ask you, okay, given this graph, are they experiencing economies of scale? If your ATC is following, then yes. If you're out here, let's say Q1, and they asked you, at Q1, is this economy experiencing economies of scale? You'd say no, because the ATC is going back up. Okay, does that make sense? I hope it does. Let's go answer that question somebody else asked about allocative and productive efficiency. Right here, QM is profit maximizing. A monopoly will produce where they maximize profit if they're allowed to. Right? That's where they want to produce because they can make the most profit, which is awesome. Right? Or minimize their losses. That's what the profit maximizing rule is. Over here, where the marginal cost hits demand, that's the quantity socially optimal. Now, somebody had asked earlier in the chat, what's allocated efficiency? It's exactly the same. Socially optimal is the same thing as allocative efficiency. It's the idea of producing what society wants. It's where the marginal cost equals demand, right? That's what we're talking about. Socially optimal, allocative efficiency, marginal cost is demand. It's all the same idea. We are producing the amount that society actually wants. There's no dead weight loss. No dead weight loss because we're making what society actually wants. Now, there's another type of efficiency, and what is it? Well, it's productive efficiency. Productive efficiency is right here. It has to do with producing at the minimum ATC, the lowest possible cost. It's not profit maximizing. It's not socially optimal. It's a completely different concept. Marginal cost is minimized. That means we're productive efficient. Okay? Does that make sense? I always feel like Khan Academy guy when I do that. Productively, write it out, deep voice. Now, if you understand that, let's see if you can apply it. Right now, I am drawing a perfectly competitive firm. Here's price, here's quantity. Horizontal demand equals marginal revenue, Mr. Darby. Marginal cost goes down and up, boom, boom. I put an ATC down here and go back up. ATC, put a price. Okay, on the AP test, make sure you always label, you produce where MR equals MC, always have a dot down somewhere. Quantity for the firm. Okay, right now, zoom in on this puppy. Ladies and gentlemen, is this firm, it's an individual firm, perfect competition, is this firm productively and allocatively efficient? That's your job. See if you can figure out how to apply this efficiency stuff and be able to show it and explain it, okay? So are they perfectly, are they allocatively and productively efficient? The answers are yes, yes, or no, no, or yes, no, and no, yes. So you only have a couple options here. You know? You have an idea? Let's see the first person that comes in with the comments here. Who thinks this is productively efficient or allocatively efficient or both or neither? All right. First of all, thank you guys. Seriously, thank you all the people who showed up and who are doing this. This is great. Ben says no. Allocative. Ryan says allocative. Ryan, what about productive? What do you think, Rye? What do you think, Rye? You know what? You guys have really hard names to pronounce. I mean, Ryan and Ben I can pull off, but Jolene, okay, Jolene, but it's got the U in there. Okay, here we go. Yes, allocative. So allocative, I'll write that over here. Allocative, yes. Productive, no. Why? Well, they are producing where the marginal cost hits the demand, right? They are making what society actually wants. Yay, they're producing what they're supposed to produce. But they're not producing at the minimum ATC. They're not productively efficient. So their costs are slightly higher. They're actually up here. Now, question for you. Why on earth is this monopoly producing where they have higher costs? I mean, don't you think it would make more sense if they produced here where they'd have lower average total costs? Well, no, because they're maximizing profit. Remember, the goal here is not to try to get your costs as low as possible. It's try to get as much profit as possible. So in this case, you don't want to produce here. They're not going to produce there because that's not profit maximizing. That's profit maximizing. And if you have higher average total cost, so be it. Don't matter as long as I'm maximizing profit. Right? So yes, allocative efficiency. Now, what do you know about allocative efficiency for perfect competition? Always. I'll say that again. For perfect competition, what do you know about allocative efficiency? Well, it's always allocative efficiency. If demand equals marginal cost, right, to be allocatively efficient, and the demand curve is equal to the marginal revenue, if the marginal revenue equals marginal cost, and they're always going to produce there, then they're always allocatively efficient. So just remember this, they're always allocatively efficient. Done. A monopoly is never allocatively efficient when they're profit maximizing, unless, you know, the graph could be drawn slightly weird, but they're basically, a monopoly is never allocatively efficient. They're always causing some sort of dead weight loss because they're trying to maximize profit. But perfect competition is always allocative efficient. And what do you know about productive efficient? Well, they're always productive efficient in the long run. In the long run, here's quantity. Now, I'll move it. Here's price. Here's demand equals marginal revenue, marginal cost. ATC goes down. I'm not showing you how we got to this. I'm just saying all of a sudden we're here. There you go. That is awesome. It's such a great graph. It's the long run. It's allocatively efficient. It's productive efficient. The market, or this market, sets the price, and this firm, there's no firms entering, there's no firms leaving, and that graph is definitely the concept. Understand the concept. This is efficient. Our resources are being efficiently used, and that's great, right? Notice that is not the case with that monopoly graph that I drew earlier, that I think I threw. In this situation, right, the monopoly would produce here. They're producing less output, which is causing that deadweight loss, right? That deadweight loss exists. You can't draw a deadweight loss on a perfect competitive firm. You can draw it on the market, but that's only if they're not producing where supply equals demand, or where if the government came in and caused some sort of weird shift on there as well. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, people are asking macro questions. Again, keep in mind we're doing micro for the first half here. Bailey called in earlier, which was awesome. Bailey, you're still my favorite student. Seriously, Bailey, you're my favorite student of all time. You got the ultimate review packet. You threw out a shout out about the packet, and you're the first person to call in. Who else wants to be my favorite student? I have right here info@acdcleadership.com. You call in on your phone, on FaceTime, put you on the screen. You can ask me a question just like Bailey did, which was great. So next person to call in, let's do it. Who is in? I don't care if it's Bailey again. Honestly, as long as it's somebody. As long as somebody's in. All right. Can you explain? I will do the resource market. Yes, I promise. Yes, you can use a pen on the fair response, but not different color pens. Matthew, woo! Somebody is calling. All right. Let's see who it is. Hey, how you doing?
Matthew.
Hey, how you doing? So my audio, turn your computer down if you could. If you don't mind. You're good.
Okay, so I was just wondering if we could run down.
Yeah.
Hold on, can you hear me?
I can totally hear you. There's just this delay, so just turn your computer down, and you'll be fine. So we're live, and everyone's listening, and they want to hear your question. I want to hear your question. First of all, what's your name?
My name is Nathan.
Nathan what?
Nathan Fraser from DC.
DC! Fraser from DC. That's awesome. Who's your teacher? What school do you go to?
I go to Sidwell Friends School, and my teacher is named Thomas Waugh.
Thomas Waugh. Okay, well, that's awesome. I'm just going to ask this, and don't have the Secret Service come shoot me or anything. Is your family work for the government at all while you're at DC?
No, my parents are both retired.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, well, let's hear it. What's your question?
So I was wondering if we could run down the important graphs for microeconomics and see how they relate to one another, and see how they pertain to greater concepts.
Yeah, well, the pertaining to greater concepts is hard because all these are all academic ideas. They're all seriously, they're all, nobody draws these graphs. There's no monopoly in the world that draws the monopoly graph. But I can't explain what you need to know for the AP test. The concepts are important. Yeah, I can totally do that. So there's going to be a delay on my screen with you. So just listen to my words. And I'll use you as the example here. There's some key graphs you need to know for the test. So take a guess what the most asked fair response graph is. What do you think is the most important graph when it comes to the fair responses?
It would be perfect competition, right?
Yeah, so it's actually between two of them. But yeah, perfect competition usually has side-by-side graphs. Stay on the line. I'm just drawing these graphs here on the screen. So usually I have side-by-side graphs. What's the other key graph that you think that they ask in the fair response?
Monopolistic competition?
That's a good one. They asked about 9% of the time. It's usually 40% perfect competition, about 45% or 40% monopolies is the other one. And then monopolies competition rounds it off. So usually the two things they're going to ask you is either perfect competition or a monopoly. Why does perfect competition have two side-by-side graphs?
Because short run and long run?
That's a good guess. So it's because one's the market and one's an individual firm. I'll ask you an easier question because you got it. Why is there only one graph for a monopoly?
Oh, because short run and long run are the same.
Yes, and because what else is the same?
And because the monopoly is the market for that thing.
You got it. The market is the actual firm. So we need to only draw one graph for a monopoly, and it is the actual firm. So that's the main key graphs you absolutely need to know. So I'm going to draw them on screen here, and people at home can jump in as well. The market for supply and demand for a perfect competitive firm or for a market, just good old-fashioned supply and demand. It's always important to label dot, dot over and dot, dot down. So for all these graphs, the biggest mistake students make is not like, it's not an intelligence issue. They're usually getting the concept. And real smart kids have a tendency just to not like finish off the labeling. They won't like dot, dot over. So perfect competition is a price taker. So they take this price, demand equals marginal revenue. All right. I'm sorry, I should know this. One more time, your name one more time.
Nathan.
Nathan. So Nathan, when it comes to perfect competition, this graph that I've already drawn up here, there's only 3 different versions they'll throw at you. What are the 3 different versions they'll throw at you?
For perfect competition,
Yeah.
profit,
Yep.
loss, and breaking even.
There you go. And technically a shutdown would be the last one, but I've never seen that on the AP test, and it would be weird to draw anyways. Be like, hey, make sure this firm doesn't produce anything. But you're exactly right. We've got a horizontal demand curve. Notice when I draw a marginal cost curve in here, we produce where MR hits MC. It doesn't matter whether I have an ATC or not. I always draw it the same. So this graph looks just like this before I draw an ATC at all. This will get you 3 out of the 4 points. 1 point for the supply and demand graph, 1 point for the horizontal demand curve, 1 point for the right quantity. And even if you mess up your ATC, you still get 3 out of 4 points on the free response, which is awesome, right? So, yeah. ATC, what do you want to do? Profit, loss, or break even? What do you feel like?
Loss.
All right, loss it is. ATC is going to be up here, hits a minimum, goes back up. ATC looks like this. And then, of course, you have to finish off the graph. Price at that quantity, not out here, not anywhere else. You got to go up to the ATC, and that's the trick. Go up from that quantity to the ATC and over, and you shade it in, and now you're making a loss. There it is. Now, the AP test has asked questions like this. If this firm continues to produce, so if they decide to produce, what must be true? And it's kind of a weird way of wording this, but it's, they keep asking it, so I keep explaining it to students. If they're making a loss, what must be true if they continue to produce in the short run? You have any idea?
They reach bankruptcy?
No, because if they're bankrupt, then they would have actually left the market a while ago. They're making a loss, but it's not that big of a loss, right? Because the price is, see if you can notice, price has to be above something. What does that have to be above? You have any idea?
Average variable cost?
You got it, Nathan. AVC has to be somewhere down here. Right? And the reason why is if the price was lower, if the price was down here somewhere, then they would have shut down and produced nothing. Now the AP test, in fact, I can't think of a time they've ever asked you to draw the AVC. Leave it off there. Don't ever draw it because it just starts to confuse people. So I'd just leave it off there. But you do understand that somewhere there's got to be an AVC on this graph, and this price has to be above it if they're going to continue to produce in the short run. So there's your main 2 graphs. This is what you're going to be asked on the AP test. Is drawing this profit or loss or break even. Really quick, since we're here, let's go ahead, Nathan, and convert this over into the long run. Right now in the short run, let's go ahead and make this in the long run. What's going to happen in the long run?
The firm will break even. So the price, marginal revenue, that horizontal line will reach the vertex of the average total.
You got it. It's going to go right here. So our firm's going to enter, or they're going to leave?
What is your question?
Our firm's going to enter or leave this market when there's a loss.
When there's a loss, firms leave the market.
That's right. They're going to leave because I'm making a loss, and I can make more. And loss doesn't just mean lost money. It means lost opportunity cost. I can make more money doing something else. And so I'm going to switch to something else. Instead of producing oranges, I'll switch over and produce, lemons or some other thing in a different market. So supply is going to shift to the left, right? That causes the price to go up, and you were exactly right. The price now is going to go up, and it's going to go right there, like you said, to the vertex of the ATC. So the AP test has asked and will continue to ask, these ideas of shifting what's called short run to long run. They'll have you draw it once. I'll put this here. Short run, draw it with a loss, and then fix it and put it into the long run. And so they'll do this. It gets kind of ugly. So the AP doesn't usually ask this as much. They'll have you do part of it on graphs and the rest explain it in words, because kids who are struggling would draw some crazy stuff, and it's hard to grade when you have all these crazy lines all over the place. Does it make sense?
Yeah. So just one additional question. They generally want you to like shade in the profit and the revenue and that sort of thing, or do they just want you to like say where it is?
Yeah, great question. They have you and they've asked like where is the profit or where's the box of loss. They don't really ask too much about total revenue or total cost. They have asked once total cost, but I mean, I don't think it's a hard question. But yeah, usually you got to be able to draw those boxes. And so no, that's the box of loss. That's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. The question you asked me in the beginning was, what are the main key graphs? Well, this is the first one. The other one is a monopoly graph. Now, monopoly graphs have 3 different versions, so I'll write it off to the side. The 3 different versions are a non-price discriminating monopoly, which is just your regular monopoly that you'd see that on most test questions. Then there's the price discriminating monopoly. And then the third one is something called a natural monopoly, which I showed earlier in the video. On the AP tests, most of the time, it's usually a non-price, and they'll be very specific on the first response. They'll say, okay, draw a single price, non-price discriminating monopoly that's unregulated, and they'll basically tell you exactly what they're looking for, so there's really no guessing. So when it comes to a monopoly, we don't have a horizontal demand curve. Nathan, what does the demand curve look like?
It is a downward sloping line that looks similar to a demand curve for an industry for perfect competition.
That's right, downward sloping demand curve. You're exactly right. The only difference is they have a marginal revenue that goes down twice as fast. So it's the same thing over again, except with this special marginal revenue curve. You just added a marginal cost and then an ATC. Let's do it with a loss as well. So an ATC here and then back up here. They have the same sort of thing. They could ask you to draw profit or loss for a monopoly. They produce where MR equals MC and then price up to demand. Now, I know I have a delay on the video, so you probably can't see what I'm talking about until like 5 seconds late, but I'll slow down. The ATC is up above, so if the ATC is greater than the price, then they're making a loss, and your box of loss is right here, done. Now, what must be true if a monopoly is making a loss and continue to produce?
What did you say?
What must be true if this monopoly here has a loss but is continuing to produce?
So if the monopoly is making a loss and it continues to...
In other words, it's not shutting down, so therefore what must be true? You know though, dude, you totally know. You just did it a few minutes ago. I was just testing you over again. I'll give you a hint. Has to do with the other graph we did earlier, and we said in perfect competition.
I'm sorry, I'm just a little bit lost.
No, you're fine. You totally get it. If they're continuing to produce, that means that the price must be above the average variable cost, right? They're not shutting down, right? So the shutdown rule applies to both perfect competition and to a monopoly, and so does the profit maximizing rule. All these rules we teach are all applying to both perfect competition and monopolies. So they're making a loss, but not a big enough loss to decide just to shut the doors, tell everyone to go home, and not produce anything at all, right?
Okay.
So I've drawn, I know I'm on a delay for you, but I've drawn both a perfect competitive firm with a loss, and then we shifted it in the long run, and then here the monopoly showing a loss as well. Those are the 2 main graphs that you absolutely need to know. Nathan, thank you so much for calling in. Stay tuned. I'm going to see if we can get another question from the other people and give you more graphs, okay?
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, man. Have a good one. That was awesome. Sweet. Thank you so much, Nathan. I appreciate it. Cool. So for those of you just joining us, somebody asked earlier, like, how long is this going on for? I don't know, as long as it needs to. We're going to be switching to macro in about 30 minutes. So 30 minutes, if you macro people are here and you're thinking, oh, I want to do loanable funds market and other graphs, we all can cover those things. But really, my goal is to help you with anything. Ben asked a quick question, so let's answer this really quick. Mr. Clifford, where'd you go to college? So I went to University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, and then I got my master's degree from the University of Delaware. I have a master's in economic education. So yeah, and I went to a few other places along the way. I went to a junior college for a year. But yeah, so now you know. Where are you going to college, Ben? Some people are asking about some specific fear response questions. Unfortunately, I don't have those fear responses in front of me, so I can't really help out much with that. Sorry, but yeah. Some people are sad because they don't get out of school till 3. I know this is weird timing to do this because some people on the West Coast are still in school, and some people East Coast are out of school and they're like at home. But yeah. So what are your questions? I'm going to get with you guys here on the chat. So, dead weight loss for externalities. That's a good question. Matthew asked, Mr. Clifford, what's the difference between increasing returns to scale and economies to returns to scale? They're totally related. Increasing returns to scale has to do with just output, the relationship between inputs and outputs. So if I double the number of workers I have, and it doubles the number of pizzas I produce, then I have increasing returns to scale. Now, when I have increasing returns to scale, that also increases the chances that the cost of those pizzas are going to fall. Because I hired only couple extra guys. I go from 2 workers to 4 workers, so I hire more guys, but I get way more output. The cost of those pizzas are going to fall, and that's called economies of scale, right? So economies of scale are about costs, right? The idea of, where was he? Increasing returns to scale is about output. So output, returns to scale, economies of scale is about costs. Hopefully that answered your question. Let's talk about the dead weight loss. I think that's a good question. So Nathan asked a great question earlier. He said, what are the key graphs you absolutely need to know? And I drew perfect competition and monopolies from. Let's do something together. Stop typing, stop texting me, and let's draw a positive externality. Right now, on your graph, draw a positive externality. Give me a price and a quantity, free market, and a price and quantity socially optimal. Now, I know I'm not your teacher per se, and I'm kind of bossing you around. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying, hey, can you draw this key graph? So if you're sitting here at home, you're watching this, let's get the job done. Let's graph this thing and see how you do, okay? So I'll say it again. I want a positive externality. Oh, why are these graphs so ugly? Positive externality. Give me a price and quantity that is socially optimal and a price and quantity that is free markets. Some people are asking about macro. Again, we're starting that up in about 28 minutes or so. First of all, I hope this is helpful. I did this because I was like, you know what? I want to help students, especially the students who got the ultimate review packet. If you need anything, you let me know. If you go to your teacher and say, listen, Mr. Clifford said he'll do more of these. I'll do it the night before the AP test. And for micro, I'll do it on Thursday if you want, if it helps. The only problem is, at some point, it doesn't help. At some point, listening to somebody ask a question isn't really helpful to you because you're like, well, I don't have that question. I need other things to work on. But whatever, man, I'm here for you because you guys were here for me by getting the packet. Okay, let's do this. Well, Ben, I appreciate you too. You're a good man. All right, here we go. So perfect competition, or positive externality. We've got price, we got quantity. We've got a downward sloping demand, upward sloping supply. It's just good old-fashioned market, except this market is special because there's external benefits on some other people. I'm not sure who, but somebody else benefits from this. So we can say this is like flu shots. And so when I get a flu shot, it benefits me, but it also benefits you and other people who don't get sick. So this quantity first is quantity free market, and there's the price free market. The free market will produce this quantity and that price. Great. That's what we learned back in Unit 2. That's just good old-fashioned markets. But this market is wrong. And there's some debate on this, by the way. There's all sorts of economists that say this is junk and not true and not real life. But for our purposes, we're assuming this exists. This demand curve is the marginal private benefit, the benefit that individuals look at when they decide to buy something. I factor in the benefit to me and my family when I buy a flu shot. This supply curve is the marginal social cost, the cost of producing flu shots. This demand curve and the benefit curve, not the demand, the benefit curve is in the wrong spot. In theory, the benefit curve should be way higher, should be shifted to the right. So this is the marginal social benefit if we factor in these external benefits. So this quantity here is the quantity socially optimal, and that price is the price socially optimal. Now, a couple things. Be careful. Stop. Don't label this demand. If you label this D equals marginal private benefit and D equals marginal social benefit, you're wrong. It's not a demand curve. It's not representing what people are willing to pay. It's representing what they should pay if they factor in all these additional benefits. So don't put demand curve at all. And also don't draw an arrow. If you draw an arrow and go, oh, the curve shifted, that's wrong. It did not shift. These are two separate benefit curves. One representing benefits to you, and the other one representing benefits to you and to other people. Ladies and gentlemen, where is the dead weight loss? Now, dead weight loss is usually a triangle, not necessarily always a triangle in every single case, but it's got to be somewhere. I showed you in the live stream on Saturday a trick, the arrow trick for finding it, but let's make sure we understand what's going on conceptually. Society wants quantity socially optimal, and I could put numbers, but I'm not going to. 100 units, and we're only producing 80 units in the free market. So we're underproducing, or the free market is underproducing. So there's all these units that society wants, but they're not getting them if there is a positive externality. This triangle here, where the benefit, the marginal social benefit, is greater than marginal social cost, for every single one of these shows you there must be something wrong. There's dead weight loss in this market. The market's not producing what society actually wants. The trick I showed you yesterday is find socially optimal. I'm circling it right there. That's socially optimal. And dead weight loss will always point to it like an arrow. Right? In this case, society says, hey, produce more stuff. We want more stuff produced. Hey, my wife just came in. So there she goes. Hey, cutie. How are you? Are you doing work or just hanging out? Bye. That's fine. Okay. Positive externality. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Yes. Somebody said quantity FM. What does it stand for? Quantity free market. And then quantity SO is quantity socially optimal. Again, this is a positive externality. Ladies and gentlemen, since we're here, let's just do a negative externality super fast. By yourself, please draw a negative externality and shade in that dead weight loss and do everything over again. Price, free market, quantity, free market, price, socially optimal, quantity, socially optimal. Let's get those graphs down so we can just get it out of the way because we're already here. All right, ready to go? Mrs. Austin said, this arrow thing saved my life. Well, I'm glad this arrow thing saved your life. It's Helena? That's awesome. I can do any of this stuff. Right now, for people who are just coming in, we're drawing a negative externality showing price free market, quantity free market, and then the dead weight loss, and also price and quantity socially optimal. Bailey, you still out there? You still out there, Bailey? How about you, Nathan? You guys still in the game? I hope. All right, here we go. Quantity, price, focus. There it is. All right, we've got a negative externality. That's what we're going for here. Negative externality. The AP test will be really clear when they want you to draw this. So it's not, don't think like, oh, is there negative externality here? They'll say, okay, there's clearly external costs. So there it is. We've got a downward sloping demand. We've got an upward sloping supply. Just like before, that's the quantity free market. That's what the free market's going to produce. That's the price free market. So all it is just supply and demand to start off with. And just label it free market and you're done. But there's this external cost. This benefit curve represents the marginal social benefit. There are no positive externalities. There's no additional benefits we're factoring in here. So this equals the marginal social benefit, which is actually equal to marginal private benefit as well. They're all equal to each other, right? But this supply curve is only the marginal private cost. It's not factoring in all these external costs to other people. If it did, it would be in another spot. That would be the marginal social cost, which is here. Notice, not supply. Don't label it supply equals marginal cost. Right? That's not what it is. This is the quantity socially optimal. Society wants this amount produced. So is the free market producing too little or too much of whatever this is? I have cigarettes or whatever this is. Are they producing too much or too little? Well, they're producing too much. Yeah, quantity free market is more than what society actually wants. And so dead weight loss is over here. Dead weight loss is all these units where the cost, the social cost, is greater than the social benefit. Society's like, you know what, we do not want these things produced. Stop producing these darn cigarettes, right? And so it points to socially optimal, bam, like an arrow, right? So right here, positive externality, stay with me, don't go anywhere. Positive externality, this positive externality says, hey, produce more, produce more. Negative externality is saying, produce less, we want to produce less stuff, right? There it is, that's a negative externality. Now, stay with me, watch this. What students sometimes freak out about or don't quite get or get confused about is a different scenario. Here is price and quantity over again, except watch this. Here's demand, here's supply, here's the quantity socially optimal, right? That's what society actually wants. And here comes a tax. Government comes in and puts in a tax, and tax is something they shouldn't tax. In other words, there's no negative externality, and they're taxing it anyways. This would cause the quantity produced with quantity with the tax to be here. Now notice, this looks identical to the graph you just drew. Negative externality looks like this. You've got these two cost curves. And over here, we've got kind of two supply curves, or it looks like two cost curves. It looks the same, right? Completely different concept. Why? Well, take a look. Where's the deadweight loss on this one? So the question is, where's the deadweight loss when the government's taxing something that they shouldn't tax? There's no negative externality. There's no positive externality. They're just taxing something. Well, it's right here. Here it is. So socially optimal. Society wants this, and they're producing, because the government telling them to produce less, they're producing less output. Right? So if the government's producing less output, or the markets are producing less output because the government taxed them, society's like, oh, we should produce more. We should produce more. But that's completely different than this idea when the free market was producing too much and we should be producing less. And so how does the government solve the problem? Or how could the government solve the problem? Well, they could tax a per unit tax, not a lump sum. A per unit tax could cause this curve to shift to the left. If there was a tax, here's my question, stay with me. If there's a tax, what'll happen to deadweight loss in this graph we just did? When there's a negative externality, if there's a tax, what happens to deadweight loss? Will it go up? Will it go down? What'll happen to it? Well, it'll go down or it'll disappear. There'll be no deadweight loss. I'll say that right. No deadweight loss if we tax the right amount, causing this supply curve to shift to the left and produce quantity socio-optimal, no deadweight loss. But when the government taxes something they're not supposed to tax, right, this will cause deadweight loss. Deadweight loss occurs because of the tax. So it's not like taxes always cause deadweight loss. It's not like taxes never cause deadweight loss. It depends. A tax on a negative externality, a per unit tax, would solve deadweight loss, so there wouldn't be any after the tax. And a tax on a different market, where there is no negative externality, would actually create deadweight loss. Does that make sense? So they started with no deadweight loss, and they get deadweight loss. On this one, they started with deadweight loss, and then they get no deadweight loss. That makes sense? Did I say that right? I'll say it again. On this one, they have no deadweight loss. They're socially optimal. The government taxes it, and it creates that triangle. It creates deadweight loss. On that one, we start with deadweight loss. It exists. The government taxes it, and deadweight loss disappears. That's my disappears, by the way. Disappears. Okay? Perfect. Okay, so right now we're going to switch this over to, yes. People are asking about specific fear responses. I actually made, so some people are going, 2007 fear response. I made videos that cover the fear response completely. So inside the hidden links, where the same place you found this, if you click on practice fear responses, click on that. I made videos that explain the 2017 fear responses. So take a look at those if you want help on those. I'm not going to cover them here. Where is elasticity of supply used? A great question, bro. It might be a broette. It's Matthew again. The question is about elasticity. Let's go talk about elasticity real quick. There's 4 types. I mentioned this in my other session. There's 4 types of elasticity that you absolutely need to know. They are, number 1, demand. Number 2, supply. Number 3, cross price. And number 4, income elasticity. Now, students go, why? Like, what? This is all confusing. It's all the same equation. Percent change in quantity, that's a delta, divided by percent change in price. Right? They're all pretty much the same exact concept, just reapplied. This one is the percent change in the quantity demanded divided by the percent change in price. This one's the percent change in quantity supplied divided by the percent change in price. This one's the percent change in quantity of product A as a result of some other change in product B. And this last one is the percent change in quantity from a percent change in income, not price. So they're all talking about the same idea. The number that pops out is actually important. So for the very first two, for demand, for example, when the, stay with me here, okay? When this is 0, this is 1, goes up to infinity. When the elasticity of demand coefficient is less than 1 but greater than 0, this is the idea of inelastic demand curve, right? Or relatively inelastic. This, when it's 1, this is unit elastic. When it's at here, it is elastic. When it's over here, it's perfectly inelastic. And if you're confused on what the heck I'm talking about, it'll make sense. Stay with me. Just stay with me. Okay? Look at this equation. Percent change in quantity divided by percent change in price. If there's a big change in quantity when there's a small change in price, so price goes down 2%, quantity goes up 400%, that's a huge number. And that means quantity is super sensitive to a change in price. That's the idea of elastic. Now, if the price goes up 5% and quantity goes down 5%, then that's a 1, and that's unit elastic. If the price goes down 20%, or it doesn't matter, numbers, 20%, and quantity only goes up 2%, that means we had a huge sale, but people didn't buy that many more, then the demand is inelastic. And in this case, the last one, if the price goes down 2% and no one changes any quantity whatsoever, right? That's the idea of perfectly inelastic. Quantity is completely unresponsive to a change in price. That's the idea of a vertical demand curve. Does that make sense? This is the idea of elasticity. What does the AP test ask? That's what you want. You don't want to review. You want to know what does the AP test ask. They have asked for you to calculate it. So be able to calculate the cross price elasticity or income elasticity or demand elasticity. They do a lot with taxes. And so they have the demand be very steep. And they'll say, here's a supply curve, supply with a tax. Forgive my crappy handwriting here. I showed this on my other session as well. Don't worry, it'll come in. It should come in. Focus, 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 focus. At some point you should focus. Okay, this is the idea. If the demand's super steep or very inelastic and there's a tax wedge or a tax box, who pays more of the tax? And in this case, consumers pay more of the tax. And so basically, there's some things you can memorize if you want. When the demand's inelastic, consumers pay more of the tax. But really, just understanding the graph should actually help. I've made videos that cover that concept in detail, and they're definitely in my unit summary videos as well. Okay? We are switching over to, we said macro in about 15, 16, 17 minutes. Ryan said a huge help. Thank you. We just did tax graphs. I think it's Emmeline? Interesting name. So far, we've had Bailey and Nathan call in. I'm opening the doors again to other people to call in. So right now, please call in on your FaceTime, info@acdcleadership.com. Info@acdcleadership. I should actually plug this in as like a thing on the bottom where it's typed in there so you can... Yes! Somebody's calling in. Here we go. All right, here he is. How you doing?
Hi.
How are you? What's your name?
Joanne.
Joanne. Well, thank you so much for calling in. Really quickly, tell me where you're from and what school you're at.
I'm from Chicago and I go to Lakes High School.
Cool. Where are you going to where are you going to college? Do you know already? Are you a junior or senior?
I'm a sophomore.
You're a sophomore. Okay, that works. That works. Whatever works. Congratulations, being a sophomore taking AP Econ. A lot of times it's seniors. What is your? I'm sorry. One more time. Your name, Julian? No.
Julianne.
Julianne.
Yeah.
Cool. Pretty name. All right. Well, first of all, thank you so much for getting the ultimate review packet. You're awesome, Julianne. How can I help you?
I'm confused about marginal utility.
Marginal utility. What would you like to know about marginal utility?
I don't understand the equation.
That funky equation, marginal utility of A divided by the price of A sort of thing? Yeah. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, thank you for calling in. Let me show you numerically what it looks like. But to do that, I'm going to have to switch to screen mode. So just stay with me. I'm on a slight delay, so just kind of bear with me as it works. I can see you on my screen. People can't, just letting you know as well. So the equation you're talking about is this ugly margin utility of product A divided by the price of product A equals margin utility of product B divided by the price of product B. When I look at this, it makes me want to puke, right? There's nothing about this that makes me go, oh yeah, that totally makes a lot of sense. I mean, ugh, right? Do you know what I'm saying? So if you can't see, this is the equation I'm referring to, right there. So how do you use this? That's the real question, right? How does this matter? Well, margin utility is just the additional satisfaction, right? So the AP test will tell you the satisfaction that some individual gets. So let's say they get 30 utils of satisfaction, some satisfaction points from riding. Let's do different things. Where are you again? You're in Chicago?
Yeah.
What's your closest amusement park? You got a Six Flags over there?
Six Flags.
Which one is it? Six Flags, Great America? Okay. Give me 2 rides there. Have you been there before?
Goliath and Viper.
Viper. Okay, perfect. So what I'm writing here on my paper is riding Goliath and Viper. So this is the 2 different things we can do. We can go ride Goliath. So you're right now with Mr. Clifford at Six Flags, and you're deciding which one do we want to ride. Do we want to do Goliath or Viper? Now, let's assume also there's a price, like a dollar price to pay for it. Even though there isn't, there actually still is the price. What's the price of riding Goliath in like real life? Do you know?
I have a season pass. I don't know.
Yeah, but there's still a price. No, it's not a dollar thing. It's something else. So when you decide to ride Goliath or Viper or some other ride, what do you factor in your brain and go, you know what? Do I or do I not want to ride this ride right now?
Well, if I want to go swim instead.
Maybe. That might be, you look at the opportunity cost of doing something else. That's actually not it. You factor this in all the time. Trust me. It's how much time you wait in line, right? So when you think, okay, when you think of the price of a ride, you're really thinking, okay, how long do I have to wait in line, and what other things could I be doing if I wasn't in 2 hours line for Goliath? Do you know what I'm saying? But let's just say, and let's just make this up for our purposes, that the price, there's actually a dollar price, and Goliath is $2, while Viper is $5. It's not very realistic, but none of this stuff really is anyways. So let's say you get 30 utils of satisfaction from riding Goliath another time. This is the additional satisfaction. And then you divide that by 2, and that tells you how much satisfaction you're getting for each dollar you spend on Goliath. How much satisfaction you're getting for each time you ride that next ride on Goliath? 15. Now notice, this is not in dollars. This is in like satisfaction points, happiness. So you get 15 utils of satisfaction for each dollar you spent on doing Goliath. Now let's go say, which one do you like more, by the way, Viper or Goliath? Which one's a better ride?
Goliath.
Okay. So let's say you get 20 utils of satisfaction of going on Viper, and we said the price of Viper is 5. Okay? Stay with me. I know I might be confusing you because you can't see it and it's coming up slow, but stay with me. Let's say you get 20 units of satisfaction and the price of Viper is $5. How much satisfaction per dollar spent are you getting?
4 utils.
Yep. Which one would you choose, given this information?
Goliath.
You choose Goliath because you get more utility per dollar spent. Now, what happens after you ride Goliath? What will happen to your margin utility?
It goes down.
Why does it go down?
Because you get less satisfaction each time you do it.
Totally. Eventually, by the way. So that principle is a true principle, but it's not necessarily true in the beginning. For example, the first time you ride a roller coaster when you get to a park, you're like, yay! The second time can even be better, or the third time be better, but eventually you get less and less additional satisfaction. Do you think that's true?
Yes.
Okay. So eventually, let's say this falls down to 20. Okay? So now you get only 20 utils of satisfaction. What's your satisfaction you get from utility per dollar for riding Goliath?
10.
Now you get only 10. Which one do you do?
Still Goliath.
Done. Perfect. Let's say this falls down to 10. What do you get now?
5.
5. What do you do?
Goliath.
You still choose Goliath. But eventually, and this is totally true, the reason why when you go to Six Flags, you don't ride Goliath over and over and over, unless you do. Do you do that? That'd be weird. Are you that kind of person?
No, it's too long.
The line's too long, right? Or the costs are too high. And you get less satisfaction from each time. So eventually this will drop to some number, and let's just say, let's say 6. So now 6 divided by 2 gives you 3, and so now you go to choose Viper instead. Now, that is the application of this real ugly equation that I want you to understand. What the AP test does is they'll give you a scenario where, and I'll write it over here, they'll give you the margin utility of doing something like eating product X, and they'll say, okay, you get 30, 20, 10, 5 utils from that, and they'll say there's some other thing, margin utility from some product Y, and you get 12, 8, 7, 2 utility from those things. And basically, they'll ask you, okay, if the price over here is $10 and the price over here is $3, how many should you do? And you do the calculation, what we just did, margin utility per dollar, and you pick the one that gives you the most satisfaction until either you run out of money or you answer whatever question they gave you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Seriously, though, if it doesn't make sense, be like, doesn't make sense, do it over again. I'll do the whole thing over again. Good. Now, real quick, what book are you using? What book are you running out of here?
I had your review packet. I kind of finished it, and then I got this crash course book.
Okay, and it's helping?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. Have you taken some practice tests?
No.
Okay, that's the first thing you want to do. Now, I mean, you're reviewing, it's awesome. Take a practice test as soon as possible. But honestly, if you do like 2 or 3 practice questions on this utility maximizing stuff, then you're going to be fine. So it's just a matter of practicing it. Also, it's not asked on the AP test all the time. It's not one of those things they ask over. I mean, it'll be on the multiple choice. It might be on a free response. But compared to like a Monopoly, it's not half as important as making sure you understand monopolies. Okay? Cool. Julianne, thank you so much for calling in. I hope this was helpful to you. This is awesome. Okay, thank you. See ya, bye-bye. Yeah, 3 calls, doing this stuff. This is awesome. Thank you so much to Bailey, Nathan, Julianne. This is awesome. And the rest of you guys for watching us review. Macro, yes, will be in like 10 minutes. I will be jumping into macro shortly. I'm doing micro right now. Somebody asked, Daniel Dust asked, is this macro or micro? Hopefully you know like the difference. That utility stuff was micro. That was micro stuff. He probably just showed up. Anyways, so first of all, thank you again so much. Let's open up the calls again to somebody else. If you're just joining us, we're doing microeconomics. Info@acdcleadership.com. Info@acdcleadership.com. Right now, call in. It's okay if it's just on the line. It's not a video. But you need to do it on FaceTime so we can hear you. Go ahead and call in right now. I'm having fun. Are you having fun? It sounds weird, but this is the kind of stuff that gets me excited. Don't forget, I have 4 full practice exams in the Ultimate Review Packet. So if you want to review, that's the best way to do it. Yeah! Who do we got now? Yeah! Hello! How are you? I'm doing well. What's your name and where are you from? Here, let me get you up on the screen so everyone can see. Oh, I'm getting a phone call too. Hold on, let me 2 things happen at the same time. Hold on. So someone was calling and, sorry, that doesn't work. So, okay, you are on the screen for the millions of viewers at home, which is more like 40 people, but that's okay. How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Cool, what's your name, what school, what city, all that good stuff.
My name is Kanika. I'm from New Jersey, and I go to South Brunswick High School.
South Brunswick?
Yep.
Cool, and you said Kanika?
Uh-huh.
Kanika, what a cute name.
Thank you.
All right. Who's your teacher?
Miss Bogert.
Bogert?
Yeah.
Is that F. Bogert or B. Bogert?
B. Bogert.
Bogert. That's cool. I taught with a Miss Bogart when I was in high school, a teacher. Okay, here we go. Kanika, what is your question?
I don't understand like an effective minimum wage policy.
I thought there was more. Did you stop? You're like, and
No,
just what it is? How do you feel about price ceilings and price floors?
I don't quite get that either.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Because they're the same concept, so that makes it that makes it better. So the first thing, let's focus specifically on a minimum wage. So what I'm going to do is I'm switching over to graph mode. So I'm taking you off my screen so other people can't see you. Let's make sure we understand the concept first. So you know what minimum wage is. I mean, everyone knows that. It's just converting it over to the graph, right? That's the tricky part? Cool. So we've got over here, we got quantity and we've got a wage because we're looking at the labor market. We're not looking at the price. We're not selling a product, we're hiring workers. There's a downward sloping demand, like always. There's an upward sloping supply. At a normal equilibrium, there would be an equilibrium wage, let's say, and let's make up a number and say $10 an hour, and a certain quantity of workers that would be hired in this market. You with me right now?
Yeah.
Cool, awesome. Do you have an older brother or a sister?
I have an older brother.
What's he do? What's his job?
He's a senior in high school.
Okay, so he doesn't have a job? Let's make up a job so we can actually talk about an actual, real human, actual job. Give me a job that would normally work for $10 an hour.
McDonald's?
Let's do, yes. Let's do, I was going to write movies. I wrote movies already before you said McDonald's. My bad. So I'm just going to do like somebody working in a movie theater. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Why not? Okay. So the first thing, the key to understanding this graph is understanding the demand curve is not by consumers. It's not by you and me. This is by businesses. The businesses are the ones who are demanding workers, and the supply curve is by you and me. We're people who are willing to supply their labor, right? At some wage, right? And in this graph, I should have kind of stopped it higher up. At some wage, let's say $2 an hour, nobody will work. There's nobody in the world who would want to work this job. But as the wage goes up from 2 to 5 to 10 to 30 or whatever, more people will be willing to supply their labor, right? That's just what a supply curve is. Except remember, we're talking about individuals supplying their labor, not firms producing a thing. Now, the government can come in if they want to, and they can set up a wage floor. They can say, listen, the wage can't go below a certain spot. The question is, where would that be, above or below equilibrium? Any idea?
Above.
Yes. So watch this. If the government, let's do two different ones. Let's do $15 and $5. Let's stay with me. Don't watch this. Let's say the government said you can't hire workers for less than $5. Right? Minimum wage, you cannot hire anybody for less than $5. Right? The firm would be like, well, who cares? We're not trying to. Like, everyone's getting paid 10. That law doesn't apply to us. Does it make sense? It would only apply if I was paying workers $2 an hour. Then if you say you have to pay them at least 5, then I'd pay them at least 5. But in other words, a floor below equilibrium has no effect. It does not affect this market because people aren't trying to hire workers below 5 anyways. But a floor at 15 totally would. If the government says, listen, you're hiring a bunch of workers at 10, you cannot pay them $10. You have to pay them at least 15. It can't go below 15. This is a floor. Now, in a product market, we call it price floor. This is a wage floor, also called what? Minimum wage. You're right. No, you're right. Minimum wage. This is the minimum wage. Now, what happens on the graph? Well, we're no longer at equilibrium, so we have two different quantities. This quantity here and this quantity over here. Right? So that's weird because now we have two different quantities. What are they? Well, this one's the quantity demanded, and this one's the quantity supplied. In other words, at a super high wage, right, firms do not want to hire these workers. I don't want to hire you if I got to pay you $15, and you're not as worth it to me. I just can't hire as many workers, because, that this represents what you're willing, this represents the number of people I want to hire, and at a higher wage, some people aren't as worth it to me. However, at $15 an hour, more people are willing to supply their labor. And so what we have here, stay with me, is right here, a surplus. Now, what does a surplus of workers mean?
There's more supply than demanded.
Yes, you're right, exactly right. What if I told you there was 1,000 people who wanted a job, but only 200 jobs or 200 jobs available? What would that be, like in regular human speak, without even looking at the graph?
If 1,000 people wanted a job.
Yep, and only 200 jobs are available. Those 800 people in between are what?
A shortage, unemployed.
Unemployed. They're unemployed. You're exactly right. This creates unemployment. These people, these 800 people, according to my numbers here, these 800 people who want a job but can't work because the coin demand fell are now no longer working, but they want a job. Those people are unemployed. So this is the graph that economists use to argue that increasing minimum wage too much, too high, too fast can cause unemployment. Now, it's totally debatable in real life, but for our purposes, that's the graph that you need to understand. Does it make sense?
Yep.
You sure?
Yeah.
Totally? Seriously, though? So this is in the resource market. The other ones you need to know are called price floors and price ceilings, spelled wrong, in the product market. So it's the same thing over again, except we're looking at goods and services. One of the rules you got to watch out for on the AP test is just remember this. If a floor is below equilibrium, it does nothing, has no effect. If a ceiling is above, it has no effect. And so it's like the opposite of what you normally think. A floor always goes above, a ceiling always goes below if it has an effect on the market.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yep.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Hey, are you a sophomore too or a senior?
I'm a junior.
You're a junior. Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much. It's Kanika, right?
Yep.
Kanika, you are awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you calling in, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was cool. Thank you, Kanika. Okay, for the people who just came in, we are switching over to macro. Listen, give me 5 more minutes. Yeah, give me 5, 6, 7, 8 more minutes. Let's say 7 minutes. 7 minutes. No effect is the same as non-binding. Yes, Nicholas added question. Yes, so non-binding is the same idea as has no effect on the actual market. That's exactly right. Okay, let's have somebody else call in. We've had Nathan, Julianne, Kanika call in. Somebody else call in and tell me, ask a question. Ooh, we got somebody. Who we got? And it is someone who hung up. Oh, I missed it. Call again. Call again. I'm not sure if they'll get in. Anyway, so people who just came in, I'm accepting phone calls through FaceTime at info@ACDC Leadership. Macro people, get your questions up and running as well. We'll take as many calls as we possibly can. I've never done this before. I'm having a blast. I'm having so much fun, which is weird. You wouldn't think that somebody would be having this much fun doing such a silly thing. So the person who just called in did a psych. People who just showed up, keep in mind, there's some rules to this. Please don't do any bad words or show any bad pictures or be naked or something weird on the phone. But I am going to show you to everybody on screen if you want. So who's calling in? Who's got an Apple device and who wants to call in? Let's hear it. I don't want to sit around and just be awkward this whole time. But so far it's pretty awkward. Pretty awkward. Come on now. You know you want to call in. There you go. All right. Hey, how you doing? How are you?
Good.
Good. Let me get you on screen so everybody in the whole world, or at least the 40 people who are watching, can see you as well. What's your name, sir?
I'm Dean Piggott.
Dean Pickett. Dean Pickett. From where?
Stamford, Connecticut.
Stamford, Connecticut. Okay, who's your teacher? And what school are you at?
Mr. Roche at King School.
King School, Mr. Roche. Is King School a private school?
Yeah.
Cool, very cool. All right, well, let's hear your question. How can I help you, Dean?
Can you go over on like monopoly and perfectly competitive graphs the socially, like the difference between like the socially optimal and the socially optimal price and the allocatively efficient price?
Yeah, no problem. That's easy. Yeah. So I'm going to switch over to graph mode so everyone else can see as well. But you're still on my screen, and I'll ask you a bunch of questions. I showed this a little earlier. Here's price. Here's quantity. The question you're asking about is called, really there's 2 things I'm going to focus on. Something called regulation and efficiency, kind of put together. So we've got marginal revenue. We've got demand. It's a price maker, right? This is not a price taker. This is like a monopoly. I've got a marginal cost curve I'm going to put like this. I'm going to have the ATC go down, hit a minimum, and then go back up. This is the graph I think they're going to ask this year. This is a natural monopoly. A natural monopoly because, I'll explain why in a second, but that's a natural monopoly, okay, right there. Okay, where does a monopoly produce if it's going to maximize profit, Dean?
Where equals MC.
MR equals MC. Here's the quantity right here, and then the price up here. They're going to maximize profit here if they could. That's great. But if the government came in, they can regulate them. They can say, listen, you're causing deadweight loss. We want this thing. Society wants this. You're the only firm producing electricity or trains or something like that, something we want. We're going to get you to produce more. Now, if they were to tax them, a lot of students go, oh, well, tax them, make them feel bad, so they'll do what you want. That doesn't work because taxing causes them to produce less. So we could do a subsidy, do a per unit subsidy. We could do other things. We could put a price ceiling, though. A price ceiling would work. And the question is, where would we want them to produce? Where on this graph would there be no deadweight loss?
At equilibrium output.
Where would that be?
At MC equals demand.
There you go. This right here, quantity socially optimal. That's socially optimal, which is the same, exactly the same. I'll draw an arrow so you can see it, as allocative efficiency. So allocative efficiency and socially optimal are all the same. If you produce this quantity, you have no deadweight loss. There's no deadweight loss. That's what the government would prefer to have, is we're making what society actually wants. But there's a problem with that. If we put in a price ceiling right here, right at that spot, the ATC would be above that price. And so they'd be making a loss. And that's a problem, right? You can't have, your electric company making a loss month after month, year after year. They're basically over time gonna, go out of business. If we put this price here, that would be the price socially optimal. There's another option. Have you heard that from your teacher, what the other option would be instead of being socially optimal?
Fair return.
Fair return. Where's fair return on this graph?
Where it hits ATC.
Yeah, ATC here. If we put a price ceiling, or the government put the price ceiling here, that's the idea of fair return. That would get the monopoly to produce more output. So this is the quantity fair return. And instead of having deadweight loss all the way out here, we'd have smaller deadweight loss. So the good news is we'd have less deadweight loss. We'd get more output if we had the price at fair return. The AP tests will ask all those questions. Everything I just showed you, they'll ask. Profit maximizing, socially optimal, deadweight loss, fair return. The key, though, there's a huge difference between fair return, which I'll put here. This is fair return. And then this concept at minimum ATC. What's that concept called? Do you know?
Productively efficient.
You got it, dude. Productive, efficient. So students have a tendency to go, oh, socially optimal. Socially optimal is the same as allocative efficient. So fair return must be the same as productive efficient, and that's not true. Right? Completely different concepts. They both involve the ATC, but they're completely different concepts. But the more important one is socially optimal. Socially optimal is here. There's no deadweight loss. Fair return is if we break even. Productive efficiency is producing at minimum ATC. That make sense?
Yep.
Cool, Dean. Other questions you have any? Any more questions?
I think I'm good for now.
Good. All right. Well, Dean, seriously, thank you so much for calling in, man. You say hey, thank you to your teacher, and thank you so much for getting the ultimate review packet, all right?
All right. Thanks a lot.
Hey, you're welcome. See ya. Awesome. You rock, Dean. You rock, dude. Okay. People are asking questions. Someone asked about production in the long run, hiring, such. These are all good questions that are coming in. Really quick, let me go back to this graph. Someone asked real quick, economies of scale. I showed this earlier. Is at quantity profit maximizing, are they experiencing economies of scale? I'll say it again. Right here, are they experiencing economies of scale? The answer is yes, because the ATC is still falling. If the ATC is going down, they have economies of scale. This question, I mean, the AP tests ask a lot of questions on this one graph. They ask you everything I showed you. They might even ask you this. This is going to start getting ugly, right? I'm putting this where MR hits the x-axis, where MR hits 0. Over here is the elastic range. Over here is the inelastic range. Pretty much almost every question they ask in Monopoly is being asked right there. Whoever's calling in, we're going to stick to micro. Hey, how are you doing?
Hello.
How are you doing? You're doing microeconomics, right?
Actually, no. I'm doing macro, and I know it starts in 5 minutes, but I have something going on in 5 minutes that I can't be on the live stream.
You're good. You're good. Let's hear it. Let's jump in now. Let me do an official announcement real quick. Give me 2 seconds. Stay on the line. All right, so micro students, thank you so much for watching these videos, and seriously, thank you for getting the ultimate review packet. Please tell your friends that it was helpful and awesome. And I seriously, I thank you so much. I'm going to switch over to macroeconomics with this gentleman, and we'll go from there. All right? So in 3, 2, 1, let's talk to this gentleman. Ready and do it. Let's hear it. What's your name? Where are you from? Are you ditching class right now?
No, I'm at a music school right now, and I just finished something, and yeah, my quartet practice starts in like 10 minutes.
Cool. What's your name? What school are you at?
My name is Matthew Wong, and I go to Grambling High School.
Where?
In Grambling, Michigan.
Okay, very cool. Well, thank you for calling in. So talk to me. What's your question for macroeconomics?
Okay, so 2 things. Could you explain net capital inflow and net capital outflow?
Okay.
Those 2 concepts I'm still not quite familiar with.
And that's it?
So, yeah. And my other question is about what is it? I think it was from.
Keep going. Keep going.
I think it's from like the one of the FRQs from 2011. Hold on, let me look it up really quickly.
Oh, you look that up while I'm going over the other thing real quick, because if that's okay. So let's go talk about net capital inflow and net capital outflow. So what you're referring to specifically is the idea of the balance of payments. So let me switch you over to screen mode here. No, graph mode here. So again, we're switching over to macro. Thank you so much for people who jumped in to macro. These are all these nice people saying thank you for micro. Thank you as well. Okay, so the balance of payments has 2 different accounts. What are the 2 accounts of balance of payments? Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, so what are the 2 accounts of the balance of payments? You got an idea?
Wait. Could you repeat that again?
Yeah. So balance of payments. We're talking about Unit 5. Your first question. There's 2 different accounts. So what's the first one? Do you know what the first one's called?
Current account, and you have your financial account.
Great. Awesome. Financial account. So let's make sure before we start jumping into your specific question, let's make sure we understand the broad picture. What does a current account involve mostly when it comes to the current account? That's mostly what?
It's mostly GDP.
It's mostly exports and imports. It's goods and services. Yeah. So we're usually looking at what's called the balance of trade, the amount of exports or imports that are coming into your country. So for example, if your exports are greater than your imports, then you have a trade surplus. And if your imports are greater than your exports, you have a trade deficit. That's the idea of what's called the current account. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm securing that.
Cool. The same idea is happening on the other side. There's inflow from other countries, and there's outflow. Now, when we say outflow, we're talking about people who were willing to buy your financial assets. So right now, there's all these people in all these other countries who are buying American assets, and there's Americans who are buying other countries' assets. We're not talking about necessarily buying like a factory in their country, but we're usually talking about bonds, right? So inflow and outflow. If there's more inflow into your country, right? If there's more countries or more people in other countries who are putting more money into your country and they're buying your financial assets and your bonds, then you would have a financial account surplus, right? The other way around, if there was more outflow, more money leaving, then you'd have a financial account deficit. So conceptually, it's almost exactly the same idea as the current account. Oh, that's spelled wrong. But it's just the idea of financial assets. Did that answer your question?
Hold on, give me a sec. Hold on, I'm so sorry. I'm like trying to do this on my phone and like kind of hard to access.
No, you're good. You're good. So, yeah, I totally get it. So, I answered this question about the financial account. I think we're gonna leave it off there, and I'm gonna move on to other things. But if you have other questions, let me know in the text. Okay?
The text.
Yeah. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for calling in, man. You have a good one.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay. So I am the people who have just come in for macro. First of all, thank you so much, macro folks. For the micro people, thank you for hanging out. Macro people, thank you for hanging out. But keep in mind, this is for people who got the ultimate review packet. I really, seriously, totally appreciate everything you guys done. for me, so I want to do something for you and make this video. Hopefully I'm helping out. We have very few people, and I wasn't expecting a huge, thousands of people, but I want to help whoever I can help out. Somebody's calling in. We're going to do you guys calling in as we go. So here it is. Let's do it. Hey, how you doing? Go ahead and turn down the audio on your computer.
How are you, Mr. Clifford?
I'm doing well. How are you doing? What's your name? What school are you from?
All right, I'm Joseph Melman, and I'm from Long Island. High School.
Long Island. Sounds good. I'm glad you're here. How can I help?
All right, so I have a couple questions. I'll just get started. Well, first I wanted to thank you for the packet and everything. It's great. But I wanted to ask about taxes and short-run aggregate supply. I understand that if the government decreases taxes, aggregate demand will increase. But if the government decreases taxes on businesses, will AD increase, or will short-run aggregate supply shift to the right?
That's a great question. And it's hard to answer because there's a lot of debate about that. What you're talking about is called supply-side economics. If the government decreases taxes on corporations, in theory, corporations will have more money to hire workers and buy machines and factories and stuff like that. And so that, in theory, could cause aggregate supply, short-run aggregate supply, and even long-run aggregate supply to shift to the right. To answer your question, the best thing to tell you is this. It depends on the test question. Because remember, what we're learning here is an academic thing for an academic test. So it depends on the individual test question. If the question said, in other words, it won't leave you hanging like, is it demand or supply? They'll tell you very clearly, if taxes drop, what will happen to aggregate demand? In that case, you say aggregate demand goes up. If they said, what will happen to aggregate supply? And they said, taxes on corporations goes down, causing producers to be able to produce more. They'll be very clear on what the right answer is, because you're kind of stepping in a very debatable area in the real economy. But remember, on the AP test, we're not really dealing with your real economy. We're dealing with an academic concept that we need to understand to get college credit. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
But yes, it basically, if you're so in real life, if you were to ask a Republican in the United States, a conservative in the United States, if we lower taxes on corporations, what'll happen? They'll tell you, yes, that'll increase supply. They'll produce more stuff, and that'll increase GDP. If we were to tell somebody who does not have as business focused mindset, that sounds horrible out of context. If you ask somebody who's Democrat, usually in most cases, it would just basically say, they'd say, well, you're just making the rich people richer by, now they can go on more vacations to Italy as opposed to actually produce more stuff, because you just made the bigwigs who own all the stocks and all the big companies richer. So it depends on who you ask. The AP test will not get political like that, though.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. What's your next question?
So with regards to nominal interest rate and real interest rate.
Yeah.
If I have a shift in the money supply, and that increases or decreases nominal interest rate, what happens to the real interest rate?
Great question. It depends in the short run and the long run. So let's, I'm switching over to graph mode. You won't be able to see me. I have a delay here, but that's okay. So you're asking a very specific question, and I love it. This right here is the nominal interest rate. This is the quantity of money. This is the demand for money and supply of money. This is one of the key 6 graphs. There's only 6 graphs you need to know. Not only. There's 6 main graphs that you absolutely have to know when it comes to the AP macro test. This is the nominal interest rate. An increase in the money supply of money, would mean there's more money out there, right? More money out there will lower that nominal interest rate, regardless of not adjusting for inflation, right? So that concept right there, that's the nominal interest rate. So that's what you're referring to. What you're asking, though, is really something else called the real interest rate. Real interest rate, quantity of loans. This is called loanable funds market. So there's demand and there's the supply, and then ... over. Here is the real interest rate. Here's the quantity of loans. So stay with me. If you're a little confused, obviously it doesn't make sense if you can't see this as fast. But
I can see it. It's all good.
Okay, cool.
Muted it. It's all good.
When the supply of money increases and the Fed increases the money supply, that'll cause the nominal interest rate. Let's make up some numbers and say it goes from 10% down to 3%. All right, so I'm making up some numbers here. And when the nominal interest rate falls, right, that means the supply and the increase in money supply, that'll increase the demand, or sorry, that increases the supply of loanable funds because there's more money out there and there's more money to be loaned out. That'll decrease the real interest rate, right? So both of these things will fall, and numerically it makes a lot of sense as well. If the amount I can charge for, lending money, so you're coming to my bank and I want to, you want to borrow money and I'm going to lend it to you. If the nominal interest rates falls down to 3%, then I'm going to obviously be like, well, I can't, if now I went from charging you 10% down to 3%, my real interest rate is also going to fall. How much I actually get adjusted for inflation is also going to fall. And so whenever nominal interest rate falls, your real interest rate is definitely going to fall. That's just in the short run. That's not like the long run effect that would also occur. All right, does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
I'm not done yet though. In the long run, so let's switch over to the long run, price level goes up, right? Because there's going to be more inflation. In theory, lower nominal interest rates means people buy more stuff, do more spending. That means when price level goes up, the demand for money will also go up. Now, this is getting into the more complicated weeds stuff. The AP test doesn't ask this very often, but I'm going to throw it at you. The demand for money would rise, and the nominal interest rate would go right back up to where it was before, right, in the long run. So really, when we talk about nominal interest rates, the reason why we refer this as nominal, because in the long run, it's not going to really have an effect on I got lost. Sorry. Yeah, the demand goes up for the money, right? And then this supply curve will shift right back to where it was before in the long run. I'm probably going beyond what we need for the AP test. What you need to know for the AP test is that an increase in the money supply would also increase the demand for loanable funds in the short run. So both the nominal interest rate and the real interest rate would both fall. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but when else does demand for money increase?
What else would cause that demand for money increase?
Yeah.
So demand for money would increase anything that would change people's willingness to hold money to buy assets or to buy stuff. And so the demand, I'm switching concepts here, so I'm switching graphs. Let's just focus on the demand. This is the nominal interest rate, and this is the quantity of money. Here's a downward sloping demand for money. The demand for money is based on two things, two different things. Number one is transaction demand, and number two is asset demand. All right? So people need a certain amount of money no matter what to buy stuff. So money is used for a medium of exchange. I want to buy things. I need a certain amount of cash. I can't have all my money in real estate. I can't have all my money in stocks. I can't have it all in bonds because if I did, I couldn't buy stuff. And so I need a certain amount of money for that anyways. If that adjusts, then that would shift the curve. If for some reason, for example, there's inflation, that would cause demand for money to go up because I need more money to go buy things because things are more expensive, right? If other factors that affect people's willingness to buy stuff, if credit cards were a lot easier or there was, some other medium of exchange. For example, let's say the economy switched to a situation where people did a lot more bartering. Like I would, do some sort of good, give you a good or service, then that would decrease the demand for money. I would not need as much money to go buy goods and services because I can just do bartering instead. So basically anything that affects people's willingness to hold cash based on transactions can shift the curve, but also assets. Now, the idea here is this. Stay with me here. Watch this. Let's say the interest rate is 30%. Right? If the interest rate is 30%, I do not want to hold very much cash. The quantity demanded of money would be very, very, very low because I'd rather go get that 30% rate of return by owning a bond. And bonds not money. So I'd rather be like, you know what? I'm not going to hold very much money at all. And the interest rate's like 1%. I might as well hold all my money in cash. And the quantity demanded is super high. And that's why this curve is downward sloping. Because, at 1%, I might as well have all my money in cash because I would, I'm not losing very much money by having it not in bonds because bonds pay so little return. So this demand curve, again, based on two things, transaction demand for money and the asset demand for money. If either of those things change, that demand can go up or down. And the good news is for the AP test, they're all very logical shifts. They're like, okay, you know, what happens in the 1970s when there's an advancement in technology where people have access to their ATMs or online banking, and it's so much easier to switch from your savings account to your checking account. Well, that would decrease the demand for money. You don't need to have all your money in cash in your checking account. You can have it in your savings account instead, right? So each one of these shifts are relatively like logical things that won't trip you up on the actual AP test. Does it make sense?
Yes, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you so much for, no, seriously, thank you so much for calling, and I totally appreciate it.
All right.
All right.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye. Later. Okay, for the people who are just coming in, you can call me if you want at info@acdcleadership.com. Info@acdcleadership.com. I will answer your questions as they come in, put you on screen. Again, this is for people who got the ultimate review packet, and I appreciate it. We're covering only macroeconomics now. We're moving on to macroeconomics. Let me know your questions and key concepts. I haven't read many of your comments here. Here we go, up and running. Let's see who this is. What a fun game. Oh, crap. I think I accidentally hung up on you. But no, I didn't. Here we go. Yeah! Hello, how are you? What's your name?
I'm good. I'm Izzy.
Oh, I think, oh. Sorry about that. I apologize. I think I just got a couple calls from people, and I totally messed up. I think I got like 3 of them. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, hold on. Let's do one person at a time. Oh, sorry. So the girl, hold on a second. So the girl I was just talking to, I apologize for hanging up on you. Go ahead and turn my audio down.
So?
How you doing?
Vermont.
Where you from?
Okay. Did you get my name?
I did not yet. No, sorry. Give me 2 seconds here so I can get you up on the screen.
Take off my head. Hold on. I'm going to turn off my headphones.
Okay. Hello, how are you doing?
Good. So anyway, I'm from Vermont, and I was wondering about the impossible trinity.
Which is what?
Okay, so it's a concept in international economics, which states that a country cannot have a fixed foreign exchange.
Yeah, turn off my audio. Turn off my audio. I hear you're live. You're live with me. Everyone's watching. Yes, go ahead. Oh crap! Now his audio turned off. Now I can't hear you.
Hold on. How do I get this thing to work?
I don't know. Ask me about the Trinity though.
Okay, so it's an idea that a country cannot have a fixed foreign exchange rate, free capital movement, and an independent monetary policy.
Okay. And what do you want to know about it?
Okay, not much.
No, I'm not asking what you know. I'm saying what do you want to know? So I've never heard the term on the AP test. It's not something that they ask or I've ever heard of. The term Trinity.
I'm on Wikipedia.
Okay.
And I'm just a dork for Econ.
Good. That's good. It's good to be a dork for something. So.
Okay, I mean,
No, let's focus because we got other people who are watching here. Is there a specific concept that you want me to cover, an idea that you want me to cover?
just how it works in general.
Well, it's a pretty broad question to ask. I'm a little confused on what you want asked. What do you want covered?
You know what? I'll learn more about this on my own. Sorry for wasting your
No, you didn't waste your time. No, I just want to make sure because we're kind of covering. You're taking the AP test, right?
Yes, for fun.
Oh, just for fun? That's good. That's awesome. So the AP test, and this is the downside. I had mentioned it the last person. It's such a general thing. And by general, I mean it's such an academic thing that there's like the real world application stuff, and there's so much international trade. If you take econ classes in college, which it sounds like you will do, you'll see there's so much more depth that we do not go into. And there's so much more happening than just, your comparative advantage, balance of trade, balance of payments kind of stuff that we focus on the AP test. So the great thing is that you're beyond where you would need to be for the AP test, but you're exactly where you should be for our understanding and learning economics. So I appreciate you calling. You did not waste time. It's good to be reminded that there's so much more to actually learn, okay?
Okay, thank you.
You have a good one. All right, next person, call in quick. Apparently you go in and go out. I apologize to The nice girl who I accidentally hung up on. I did not mean to do that. That was an accident. People who just came in, it's at info at acdcleadership.com is what you call in. All right, here we go. Waiting for it. In 3, 2, 1. Who's calling? There you go. I told you somebody would get in there. All right, here we go. Hey, there she is. I'm so sorry for hanging up on you earlier.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good, good. So your screen's a little dark, but we can still see you. You're on screen with everybody else. You're fine. You're fine. What's your name? Where are you from?
My name's Izzy. I'm from Vancouver, Canada.
Vancouver, Canada. That's awesome. Thank you so much for calling in from Canada. How can I help?
I was wondering, I did a bunch of mock exams, and a lot of stuff came up about relationships with unemployment.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you could go over that.
Which so like you're talking about just the relationships between unemployment and like output and other things like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, there is a graph. Let's do. I'm going to switch over to graph mode here. What is the key graph that shows? What's the most important graph in all of this class? Do you know?
The money market and ADAS.
ADAS. Yeah. So that's the most important graph by far. But there's another key graph that shows where the economy is that includes unemployment. Now I'm kind of drawing it here. So what down here? Unemployment. What's the other graph that shows unemployment?
Isn't it the? Oh,
It's okay. It's called the Phillips curve.
You know what?
It's all right. So we've got inflation here, and we've got unemployment there. We've got the Phillips curve. In the short run, there's a relationship between them. They're inverse related, so the short run Phillips curve. The reason why this is important is this helps explain the economy and how this actually works. If the economy is here at point A, then we have really high unemployment, but really low inflation, right? That's called a recessionary gap. Okay, and over here at point B, right, we have very low unemployment, but very high inflation. That's called an inflationary gap. So the AP test will ask you all sorts of questions about how do you get into those gaps, how you get out of those gaps using fiscal and monetary policy. The main relationships that you need to know is the idea of things like government spending, because you asked about relationships, would increase output and therefore would decrease unemployment. So for example, if the government were to increase government spending, that would move us along this curve, putting us, let's say, point C, and moving us with less unemployment because we're producing more stuff. That's output, PUT. So, when it comes to like key relationships, unemployment isn't like particularly hard. It's just all logical. If more countries buy our stuff, so there's an increase in exports, that would increase more output. And more output, again, would lead to lower unemployment. Right? We'd move further this direction. You could go the other direction. If consumer spending were to fall, I know it's harder to see, then we would produce less output, which would be more unemployment. That would be like going the other direction. So we start up here and we start moving that way. Whether we start here or here, doesn't matter where we start. Just the idea of moving up and along this thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So the point is, unemployment, I think that relationship is easy. What's a little trickier is knowing those three types and what questions they ask. So what are the three types of unemployment? Do you remember?
Frictional, cyclical, and structural.
Yes. Which ones exist no matter what?
Everything but cyclical.
There you go. So frictional, structural always exist, and they make up what? You know what that's called?
The natural rate of unemployment.
Natural rate of unemployment. There's your main concepts. Like of the Phillips curve questions I showed you earlier, they'll ask maybe one of those. They'll ask three of these. They'll say, okay, which one of these individuals is frictional unemployed or structural unemployed, or understand the idea of cyclical unemployment. And the idea that, when the economy is doing bad, that means we have all three of them happening, right? So again, those are the main concepts they ask about unemployment. They also ask you questions about calculating the unemployment rate. So make sure you understand, there's certain, like for another one they ask you is who counts and who doesn't count. So give me some people who don't count towards unemployed.
A person who is not currently actively looking for a job.
There you go. How about somebody who's not working but decided to give up? What's that called? Discouraged worker. You got it. Yeah, discouraged worker. What about a part-time worker? Do part-time workers count as unemployed?
Yes, they know they count as employed.
Yeah, fully, completely employed. So discouraged workers, they don't count, but part-time workers do count. Though I know that's so simple to say that, but that's really what they ask. It's really not even that tricky questions they ask about unemployment. It's kind of the basic stuff. The only thing you should watch out for, though, is something like this. On the AP test, they have asked questions that are weird. They said if there's fiscal policy, I'll write FP, and government spending goes up, what happens to price level and employment? So employment is the opposite of unemployment. So if GDP or if government spending goes up, aggregate demand would go up, price level would go up, and employment would go up, but unemployment would go down. So it's just one of those wording things you got to watch out for. Be careful on the AP test when they're talking about, are they asking about unemployment or employment? So, if you read it as unemployment, then you get the reversed answer.
Okay.
Make sense? Did I answer your question? I'm not sure if I did. I hope I did. Did you have another question? You sure?
I have another question about quotas, and if it's like a big thing you need to know.
It is, quotas is micro concept. So you're talking about on a market graph or just the general concept of what they are?
Just a general concept.
They don't ask very often in the AP test. In fact, if you were doing micro, then I'd say yes, you should, know them because there's some things you got to know graph-wise. But if you're doing macro, you don't need to know quotas at all. Of course, I say that, watch, it's like the main concept on the AP test this year. It's just quotas, 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 which I don't think it would be. It's always kind of the same kind of stuff, for sure. Okay? Thank you so much for calling in from the Great White North. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, eh?
Thanks so much.
All right,
Awesome.
bye-bye.
Bye.
That was awesome. Too great. All right, if you're calling in, call in now. Info@ACDC Leadership will get you called in. Last time there was like 4 people who called and I just couldn't get to everybody. So first come, first serve, economics applied. So yeah, who's calling? Who's calling? Who's in? Who's in? I hope this is helping. Let me know in the comments if any of this stuff is helping you guys. If it's not, that's okay. And people are asking about specific questions on specific tests. Unfortunately, I don't have the capacity or ability to now go over those questions specifically, but I will help your questions as much as I can. Hello! Yay! How are you?
Good.
Good, good. What's your name? 2 questions. Let me get you on screen here so everyone can see you before you ask your question, and you can tell everybody who you are and all that good stuff. So, who are you?
Alright, so my name's Arabella.
Hi, Annabella.
I'm from Indian Hills,
Where's that?
and my high school is Indian Hills. So my first question is with what?
I was just, where is Indian Hills? What city is that in?
Oakland, New Jersey.
Okay, very cool. Great. Who's your teacher?
Mr. Murphy.
Mr.
He
Murphy.
actually recommended you to my whole class.
Oh,
I've been
cool.
keeping him up to date with what you do.
Cool. Tell him, get the ultimate review packet next year for his class if he didn't already do so. It's got some good stuff next year. I made some new things.
He got one, but he hasn't really. He got one, but he's been using it a little, but not like that much.
Okay.
He's been like doing some key.
Okay.
So
How can I help?
First question. Key count.
I lost your audio.
First
Did,
question is with T accounts.
yes. T accounts.
You lost my audio.
You're good.
Yeah. So the money multiplied within with like the excess reserves and everything that always gets me so confused.
Right.
It's like deposits and taking all that money out.
Okay. So that's a great question. That's a great question. Let me switch over to another mode here. I think the best way to answer that question is to ask you a question and everybody else a question. So give me 2 seconds here. I'm opening up a practice worksheet so we can see this stuff. Give me 2 seconds here. All right.
Okay.
I probably should have had these things. Some of these things are already set to go, but that's okay. All right. So you're asking about bank balance sheets. I'm going to open up something on the screen so everybody can see it. I'm not going to be able to see you, or no one else can see you either. But take a look at this. No, which one is it? So I think this is what most people get tripped up on. So I'm just going to talk to, let me make sure everyone can see me first. Yeah, everyone can. Okay, so everyone take a look at this. What you're looking at, this is actually part of the new resource I'll be making next year. They're coming out next year, but let's use it. Let's assume the reserve requirement is 10%. Okay, so the reserve requirement is 10%. And the question I'm asking here is, what is the initial change in the money supply, and what's the change in demand deposits? What's the change in required reserves when the Fed buys $100 worth of bonds, or when a person deposits $100 of cash in their bank? I think once we practice these two things side by side, I think we're going to be fine. Okay, so let's go over each one of these. They're numbered 8, 9, 10, and 11, and 12, so I'll number them the same thing, even though they're out of numbered for our purposes. So the first question is, when someone buys $100 bonds, when the Fed buys $100 worth of bonds, what is the initial change in the money supply? So, and the AP test has asked this several times. So I'll ask you, when the Fed buys $100 worth of bonds, what happens to the money supply? You have any idea?
So the money supply, my teacher always says buy bloat, so wouldn't that both bloat the money supply?
Yeah, so in both cases, yeah, that's a good question. So students go, okay, buy bonds, increase the money supply. But the word here is initial. The initial change in money supply is something different. So this goes to the idea of bank balance sheets. So when the Fed buys $100 worth of the money supply, right, it would increase the money supply. Yes, so in question 8, so I'll make sure I write this. So it'll increase by $100, right? So can you see this, by the way? I hope you can.
Yeah.
It'll come up. So the initial change in the money supply is an increase of $100 because the Fed took money from the Treasury, bought bonds. Those bonds weren't money, and all of a sudden now the bank now has $100 it can loan out. Now look at the second part. $100 of cash deposited in this bank. What happens to the money supply?
The money supply, hold on.
It's okay, take a guess. It's okay if you're wrong. That's all part of this.
Initial change in wouldn't it do nothing?
Yes, there'd be no change, right? There's no change because that $100 is already part of the money supply. So no change when there's $100 of cash. And I think the students recognize that. They go, oh, okay, I think I get it. Look at number 9. Number 9 is asking about the initial change in demand deposits. Demand deposits is money that people have deposited with this bank. So what happens to the bank deposits when the Fed buys those bonds?
Nothing, because it's buying from the bank itself.
You're right. No change. You're exactly right. So far, so good. You're shooting 100%. Good job. So there's no change with that when the $100 buys the bonds in demand deposits because no one deposited more money. Now, when someone deposits $100 of cash in the bank, what happens to demand deposits on the other side?
Go up 100, at least 100%.
It goes up by 100, and the initial means it will go up 100 by 100% for sure. I'll just be doing up arrows and down arrows from now on. But yes, for number 10, the initial change in required reserves. How much is required reserves going to change by when the Fed buys those $100 of the bonds?
$10?
It's a good guess. The answer is no change.
No change?
There's actually no change, and the reason why is they only have to hold what people hold in reserve. So I'm sorry, back up. They only need to hold in reserve, required reserves, what people deposit. So since the demand deposits didn't change, the amount of required reserves will also not change in this case, right? Because people didn't deposit more, so the bank doesn't have to hold anymore. They can loan all of that $100 that the Fed bought out now. On the other side, though, how much is required reserves going to change?
Oh, $10 on
It's going to go up by 10. That's exactly right. So the bank does have to hold 10. Okay? All right, to 11. Number 11. Initial change in excess reserves. How much is the initial change in excess reserves? When the Fed buys $100 worth of bonds.
No change, because it's not coming from the excess reserve.
That's
or does it have a bond thing already?
That's a good guess, but no, it's going to go up by 100. And the reason why, is when the Fed, okay, watch this. Just imagine you're a bank, you own some bonds, right? The Fed's supposed to pay you back in 10 years. You have a 10-year yield in this bank. And the Fed buys them back early. Well, now you have this money that you can loan out. And how much can you loan out? We can loan out all 100. And you don't have to hold any in required reserves. You can loan out all 100, right? On the other end, though, how much can the bank initially loan out of that $100 that was just deposited in the bank?
Wait, what? Sorry.
The answer 11, the second half of number 11. So the initial change in the excess reserves from $100 deposited in the bank in cash.
It'll be $100.
Well, remember they had to hold some in required reserves. So how much can they loan? They can't loan out that 10. So how much can they loan out?
90.
90. That's right. So 90 is how much they have to. They can loan it. That's their excess reserves. Now I think 12 is the most important question, and I think that's what I was trying to get at this whole time. When the Fed buys $100 worth of bonds, all of that money gets multiplied. And since the required reserve is 10% and the multiplier is 10, then it's $100 times 10, which is a grand total of $1,000 increase in the money supply. That the maximum change in the money supply, assuming banks loan out all of it and they hold no excess reserves. So that's how much banks can make of money if the Fed buys bonds. And what you said initially was exactly right. When the Fed buys bonds, your teacher says the money supply gets bloated. That's right. It'll increase the money supply by $1,000. Exactly correct. But when someone deposits $100 in the bank, which is a different concept, and the bank can only loan out 90 of that dollars because they have to hold 10 in reserve, how much money supply do you think that actually generates?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah. No, you're fine. The second half of question 12. Maximum change in the money supply when someone deposits $100 of cash deposited in the bank.
The maximum change, $900?
$900. You got it, girl. You got it. 900 because only the $90 is new money created. The initial $100 was already part of the money supply. Only the $90 the bank initially loans out can be new money, and that gets multiplied times 10 and becomes $900. So this is the only two questions they ask. Does the Fed buy the bonds, or does somebody just deposit money into that bank? If you understand this, then you pretty much understand enough to get through the majority of the questions they ask on a bank balance sheet, because those are the two main things they ask. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky. Really, the trick with the bank balance sheets is just practice. I made a video. It's called literally Bank Balance Sheet Practice. Try that one because we did the same thing I did with you over and over and over again. I think I did it 3 times, and that's pretty much the best way to learn it. And then take a look at some multiple choice questions and go, okay, do I get what they're asking? Because it's one of those things. It's weird. It took me time to learn it as well. But the only way I eventually got it was just like practicing it enough to where I kind of saw all different options. So it wasn't a question anymore about concepts. It was just like, okay, which one of the many options do they usually ask that is the right answer? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much for getting the Ultimate Review Packet. Tell your teacher that he's doing a great job teaching you. So thank you, okay?
Can I just ask one more thing?
Of course you can. What's your question?
So the second thing that I get confused on is whenever the questions ask when the money gets increases relative to another money.
Yeah.
I don't understand what they mean by that. That always trips me up.
Yeah, well, that's called foreign exchange, which is a completely different concept. That's the value of one currency relative, like how many dollars will get you how many yen, and how many yen will get you how many dollars. Do you know what I'm saying? So that's a different unit and a different concept, which I'll try to talk about later as we do this. But I promise you I will cover foreign exchange, but not quite yet. I'll just get to another question, okay?
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. See ya. That was awesome. All right, call in. You know who you are. Somebody tried to call in a little early. I appreciated that. First come, first serve when it comes to this sort of thing. I appreciate you guys being patient. I'm trying to work out with one person at a time. I should have had maybe some multiple choice questions already pre-printed and kind of ask you guys as we go. But really, I'm going to try to focus on concepts more. So here we go. First one in. Here it is. Hello. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
You are the winner. I had like 5 people calling, and you are the winner. Congratulations. You are on screen with everybody watching right now. What's your name? Where are you from? What's your school? What's your teacher?
My name is Manal, and I'm from South Brunswick High School in New Jersey.
Hey, I already had somebody from there. Great.
Oh yeah, my friend, she just texted me saying that she FaceTimed me.
Awesome.
Our teachers love you. So.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So your teachers, you have 2 different teachers?
Well, I have
Miss Galero, and she has a different teacher.
Okay.
She takes micro, so.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. What about the, and you got the ultimate review packet, or your teacher got the ultimate review packet, and then.
Oh, I got it.
You got it? Well, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for getting it. Seriously.
No problem.
Yeah. Okay, talk to me. How can I help?
Okay, so I have a question mostly on the foreign exchange market.
Great. That's what we were just talking about. Perfect.
So basically, I don't know if you can see these graphs.
Yes.
So basically it says the price level in Canada increases, and then what happens with the supply and demand graphs of the quantity of dollars and the exchange rate.
Perfect. All right. And it's Canada's inflation that went up?
Yeah.
Okay, let me write that down. Because it depends, right? If the United States or it's Canada, and we're analyzing dollars?
Yeah.
Cool, awesome. So I'm going to put graph mode, if that's okay. I'm still listening, and so don't go anywhere. But let's go to graph mode. Okay, so everybody out there, including you, I'm sorry, your name one more time is?
Manal.
Manal. It's a beautiful name, Manal. Okay. Right now, we're going to draw the foreign exchange graph for dollars. So we're analyzing U.S. dollars. The last caller had just asked the same sort of question about foreign exchange. Let's try to make sure we know the graph first. Down here, we've got the quantity of dollars. And we're analyzing Canadian dollars. Canadian dollars is CAD, C-A-D. You don't need to know that for the AP test. But it's the number of CAD you get per dollar, USD. This is what you would label up here. This is the exchange rate. How many Canadian dollars do I get for each US dollar? There's a downward sloping demand for dollars. There's an upward sloping supply of dollars. And there's a quantity at equilibrium. And there's a price. Right? Now, the AP test will ask, oh, by price, I mean exchange rate, which is the price. The AP test will ask you to draw the key graph. So make sure you can draw the actual key graph. You've got it. But then they'll give you, like in this question, a scenario that shifts the curve. And so you have to go, okay, is it demand or supply? Now, for this one, Manal, who demands dollars? Canadians or Americans?
Canadians.
Yes, by Canadians. So Canadians are the ones who demand dollars. They're the ones who are in line at the foreign exchange like, hey, can you please give me some of these dollars? Who supplies them?
The Americans.
By Americans. Now, it's not like that always. Obviously, some Americans who go overseas or into Canada and they come back, they want their dollars back. But if you keep it in your brain that demand is by the Canadians or the foreigners and supply is by the domestic people, in this case the Americans, it'll help solve some of the problems. What was the scenario again? It said inflation in Canada, right?
Yeah, it said the price level in Canada increases.
All right, so the AP test will give you a scenario. There it is, inflation in Canada. What'll happen? Well, inflation is a double shifter. Both curves will shift because it's going to affect both Canadians' willingness to buy American stuff and Americans' willingness to buy Canadian stuff. So technically, it's a double shifter. Now, on the AP test, they usually don't have you do the double shift. They'll say, what happens to demand? Or what happens to supply? And so really, the question will say, look like this. It'll say, what happens to demand? What happens to, what happens to demand? What happens to supply? And then what happens to the value of the dollar? In other words, will it appreciate or depreciate? Those are the questions they ask, and you need to know. They usually don't ask both demand and supply because they just don't. But it's actually technically a double shifter. All right, who do you want to start with, Americans or Canadians?
Canadian.
Okay, what are Canadians going to do if there's really high prices? So let's say you're living, right outside of Buffalo, New York, or Detroit, and you're Canadian, and you're thinking, oh crap, prices have doubled here in Canada, and you think, you know what, I don't want to buy Canadian stuff. I want to go buy American stuff. So what's going to happen over here? Demand or supply? For demand. What are the Canadians going to do?
They're going to demand more American goods.
If they want demand American goods, what do they need more of then? They need more demand.
They need more American currency.
There you go. They need more of the dollars. So the demand will shift to the right because Canadians will want to buy more American stuff because the Canadian stuff's more expensive. So yes, demand curve has shifted to the right. Perfect. Let's go to the other side. What are Americans going to do? So you're living now in Detroit, right? You're living in Detroit, and normally every month you go to Canada for fun, or you go to the Canadian Mall sometimes, or you travel to Canada. What's going to happen now?
I don't know.
Well, think about it. So let's say you are. Where are you from again? You're in New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
Nowhere close to Canada. But if you're living in Detroit and you normally go to Canada and you find out prices are way higher than they were before, and you're like, oh, prices doubled in Canada, you're not going to go there as often, huh?
Yeah.
right? So you're going to be supplying less dollars in the foreign exchange. You're not going to go to the foreign exchange very often and put in your dollars to go get those Canadian dollars. So you'll be supplying less dollars, right?
Okay.
So demand's going to go up, supply is going to go down. And here's the key, stay with me. No matter what, the value of the currency, the exchange rate, is going to go up for the dollar. So to answer these questions, demand will go up, supply will go down. What happens to the dollar? Will it appreciate or depreciate?
It'll appreciate.
It'll appreciate. The dollar appreciates, right? Because the graph says the dollar now has appreciated. And that leads to a chain of events that can cause other things to happen, but we'll stop there. Those are the kind of answers you're going to see. Demand up, right? Supply down, and the dollar will appreciate. This, like I said before, is a double shifter. Let me give you another quick example.
Okay.
Let's assume instead of inflation in Canada, let's assume a high interest rate in the U.S. In the U.S. Ugh, this is ugly. A high interest rate in the U.S. would cause the same exact thing. Exactly the same shifts, exactly the same thing would happen as before, right? These Canadians would want to buy more dollars because they want the higher rate of return. Americans would be supplying less dollars because they're like, you know what, I might as well keep dollars in my own country because I get a higher rate of return. That's also a double shift. So stay here, watch this. There are 4 shifters of foreign exchange, 4 things that cause this curve to shift. Get any ideas on what they are? What are the ones we just did?
We did inflation.
Uh-huh. What was the other one? And what?
Interest rates.
And interest rates, right? Mm-hmm. And so what is the other 2? What could the other 2 possibly be?
Is it, like, I've seen a lot of scenarios if, like, tourists like to visit certain places.
Perfect. Taste and preferences. If people prefer to visit Canada or not visit Canada, or visit the United States or not visit, so taste and preferences, yes. And the second one is income. Okay. Income means people's, if people are richer, they buy more things from other countries. So in this case, watch this. These 2 here are double shifters. Both will shift the supply and the demand because they'll have an effect on both the foreigners and the domestic people. These are single shifters. So if Canadians want to visit the United States, right, that we know they want dollars, but we don't know anything about the Americans, whether they do or don't want to go visit Canada anymore. So these are just single shifters here, single shifters here, and these ones are double shifters there. Make sense? We covered this one. It was the one you gave me. We covered international trade. That one we just did. These 2 are easier because it's just taste and preferences. If Canadians want to go to the United States, the demand for dollars goes up, demand and the dollar appreciates. Mm-hmm. So the best way to practice this is by far multiple choice questions. So sit down and do the Unit 5 multiple choice question practice videos that I did. I asked you a bunch of questions because once you practice it, you'll be like, yeah, I got it, and it'll be fine. Okay?
Okay, yeah.
Thank you so much for watching my videos, and thank you so much for getting the ultimate review packet. I seriously appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Okay, everybody else, call on in. Call in. First person in. Who is it? Keep in mind, I can't get to all of you. I mean, I know there's like 8 people who call in. People who don't know what we're doing, it's info@acdcleadership.com is my my FaceTime number. info@acdcleadership.com. There it is. First person in. And who's the big winner here? Who's this? Hello! How are you? Go ahead and turn down my audio. How are you doing? Yeah, just turn down the audio on your computer.
Okay.
Perfect. Or else I'm going to keep coming in.
Okay.
Cool. How are you? What's your name? What school do you go to? How are things?
I'm Simran. I'm also from South Brunswick, like
what?
New Jersey.
Okay.
My question's also about foreign exchange. So one of mine is that, like, it says that the real interest rate in France decreases relative to the real interest rate in the U.S.
Yes.
And it's asking about what would happen to, like, the euro and if it appreciates or depreciates on the exports and imports.
Right. Okay, so let's go right back to the same graph we were just working on. I'm going to go to graph mode here for you. So here we go. I'm not sure if everyone saw you. Were you able to see yourself on screen?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That's half the fun of this game. No, you gotta see it. Hey, hello, wave hi, there she is. See, real person, I'm not talking to myself. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, so here we go. Let's ask the question over again. We're talking about, foreign exchange, and you're talking about interest rate. Notice the one that you just asked me was the one we were just talking about. There's interest rate. Right? Interest rate's one of those shifters. In this one, give me the scenario again.
So it says that real interest rates in France are decreasing relative to the real interest rates in the U.S.
Okay, so there's two ways to look at that. Either you can think of higher interest rates in the United States or lower interest rates in France. Okay, so we'll analyze the euro because that's what we're analyzing, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so exactly the same graph. I'm going to do fast labeling because this is what I would do on the actual test. I'd label the exchange rate. Here we go. So in this situation, if the real interest rate in France has gone down, right? Do Americans want to go buy those French bonds anymore? No. So the demand curve would fall right here for the demand, and the French people, the people in Europe, will supply more of their euros because they want to go get the relatively higher American bonds because American bonds have a higher interest rate and theirs is already so low, right? So the graph tells me, just by looking at the graph, that the exchange rate fell or the euro depreciated, right?
Okay.
So again, the reason why I did a double shift is because this is one of the double shifters. But the AP test usually doesn't ask what will happen to both demand and supply. They'll do one or the other. Or it sounds like this question is just asking what will happen to the currency. And the answer was it will depreciate. Now, if the euro depreciates, what happens to the dollar?
The dollar would appreciate?
It has to. So when one goes up, one goes down. And so once you figure that out, I mean, here's the trick. If interest rates go up, that causes your currency to appreciate, right? So once you knew that, and you knew that America's interest rate was higher, then you knew the answer had to be euros would have to depreciate because they can't both go up, right? They can't have one appreciate, one depreciate. So if the interest rate in the United States was higher and it appreciated their currency, then that means Europeans had to depreciate. Does that make sense?
So would that make the French exports to the U.S. more expensive?
Oh, there's your next question. Great question.
Yeah.
So
that was part of it.
Yeah. So depreciation, appreciation. This is one of those key relationships. And for relationships, I always like to draw a heart. Relationships. When the currency depreciates, and we're looking for like the United States, right? What will happen to the United States net exports, right? If the students, so we're looking for the United States net exports. If the currency depreciates, students usually go, oh, that's a bad thing. Depreciation is bad. No. If the currency depreciates, that makes it cheaper to buy American stuff. So the net exports will go up. We'll buy, other countries will buy more of our stuff, which is a good thing for exporters. If our currency appreciates, it's more expensive. People can buy less of our stuff, so net exports would actually go down. So this is a relationship. This is not answering your question. It's a relationship, and students need to understand, okay, if you just know relationships, depreciation, current exports go up, appreciation, exports go down. If you get that, then you can answer questions like this. If the euro depreciates, where are we? If the euro depreciates, what's going to happen to, the question's asking for European net exports?
Yeah, it's asking like if the French exports would be more expensive to the U.S. or if the French imports would be cheaper from the U.S.
French exports will be cheaper for Americans. That's exactly right. And so net exports for Europe would actually go up. This would cause this to occur. Does it make sense?
So you're saying that French exports would be cheaper for the U.S. So that would cause U.S. net exports to go up.
Right. No, other way around. So the net export, French exports are going to be cheaper for Americans. So the French, this is France, French net exports will go up, not American net exports will go up.
Okay.
Yes. Right? Americans will buy more of their stuff because the European currency is relatively cheaper. Does that make sense?
So the French currency depreciates, so Americans will buy more France stuff, so that would cause France's net exports to go up.
And therefore their GDP would go up. right? Their price level go up, and then you can answer all sorts of questions going that direction as well. That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
Thank you so much for calling in. I appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, bye-bye. All right, next person to call in. Who is it? Let's find out. I don't know. Who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? Having a blast. It's at info@acdcleadership.com if you're trying to call in. It's kind of a free-for-all a little bit. People just call in and whatever. Whoever does call in, make sure you show some excitement for life and be excited. There it is. And winner, winner, chicken dinner. There he is. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. What's your name? Where's your school? Let me get you on the screen so everybody can see you really quickly. So here you go. All right, let's see your full face if you don't mind. There he is. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Cool. What's your name and what school are you from?
I'm Kevin, Davenport School of the Arts.
All right, where is that?
Orlando.
Okay, cool. All right. Well done. I'll be in Orlando this summertime. It'd be great. Cool. And who's your teacher?
Miss Felice.
Did she get the Ultimate Review packet, or did you buy that on your own?
I bought it on my own.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right. How can I help you?
I really wanted to know about the 3 ranges of aggregate supply.
Good question. Great question. Great question. What specifically do you want to know about them?
Just to understand, like I get like that it's Keynesian, classical, intermediate, but I don't understand like what's actually going on. Like what part's sticky, what part's I can basically like label the parts on a graph, but like I don't know what's actually going on.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. First of all, this is not one of the things I covered at my last session, so this is really good you brought it up. You're off the screen. I'm going to graph mode here. So we've got price level and GDP. Real. First of all, let's draw it. You're right. We've got a Keynesian range, we have the intermediate range, and we have the vertical classic range, right? That's the short run aggregate supply curve. At some point, and let's just put it right here, we've got the quantity at full employment, which is the long run aggregate supply. Okay, so there's the graph, and I think you're right. Most students are in that stage where like, okay, I get the graph, but I don't get what I'm actually doing and why it actually matters. Here's why it matters. I'm going to use my pen to explain. All right, so hopefully you can see my graph here on your screen. If I have the demand right here, what's happening on this economy? So full employment, inflationary gap, or recessionary gap?
You're at full employment.
You're at full employment, right? So right now we're at full employment. We have frictional and structural unemployment, no cyclical unemployment, right? The economy is doing great. You with me? Yeah. Now, as the aggregate demand starts to fall, consumer spending decreases, aggregate demand starts to fall, right? We have price level go down and output go down at some point. Now, Keynes said, and this is the Keynesian part, that at some point when we have really low output and high unemployment, there is no pressure on prices. Prices don't really fall because prices are sticky. That's the idea of sticky prices. He's basically saying that the price doesn't go down because there's, unions and morale and issues that when the aggregate demand falls at some point, maybe down to here, right? There's really no pressure on prices to go down because people they'll get all upset if you lower their wages, right? And so at some output, let's say quantity right here, we have really high unemployment. The economy is totally in the crapper. And so that's the idea of sticky wages. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. If wages weren't sticky, then this would be still downward sloping, this would be down like this all the way down. But it's not. At some point, we assume it's like that. That's why this is called the Keynesian range. Now, here's Keynes' biggest idea, and this is why it matters more. Not so much aggregate demand falling is the issue. Really, he focused more on this idea. If aggregate demand were to start going up, so let's start shifting it up because of government spending. So we're using government spending to close this gap. What happens to the price level from here to here as aggregate demand starts going up? What happens to the price level?
As aggregate demand starts going up?
Yeah. So, but what does it do in this range? So at the AP test, we're to say in the Keynesian range, what happens to price level and output? You say, well, output clearly goes up. What happens to price level?
Stays the same.
Stays the same. This is key because other economists at the time with Keynes would say, well, if you increase government spending, all you're going to cause is inflation. But this graph suggests that at some point when you have high unemployment and like all these workers at a job, as you increase aggregate demand, you're not going to put pressure on prices at all. People are not going to be like, oh, bid up the price of lumber. And, if no one's really working and no one's really using machines, no one's really using lumber, then there's going to be no pressure on prices as we start getting out of a recession. Now, as that curve starts shifting further over and further over and further over, right, eventually what starts happening to price level?
It's going to start increasing.
It starts going up until some point, all the way out here, let's say from 85 to 86, what happens to price level as we shift from here to here? Price level does what?
Decreases?
From 85 to 86.
Oh, it's going to increase.
It goes up. What happens to output?
It's going to increase as well.
Take a look, though. Notice the aggregate supply is vertical. What happens to output?
It's going to stay the same.
Stays the same. Right? Now, why that's important is because at some point, there's only so much you can produce. Like every machine's working, every worker's working overtime, everyone's super busy because the economy's overheating. You can't get any more output beyond some point, right? And so that's the idea that at some stage, now price level goes up, and that's all you're getting is more inflation. But that's well after we've passed full employment, right? So the three ranges of this graph, without getting everything too crazy and too ugly, is this first range we call the Keynesian range. Gosh, that is ugly. That's the Keynesian range because if aggregate demand falls, wages are sticky, and price level doesn't really fall. And as aggregate demand goes up, there's very little pressure on price level, so price level doesn't really change at all until you get closer to full employment. And this range is called the classical range because once you increase government spending at this point, all you're going to get is inflation. Right? If you, right now, for example, if the government were all they did was have this huge, today in the United States, this huge government spending project, it would probably cause a lot of inflation because everyone already has a job. And to get them to work for you as opposed to the government is going to, get them to work for the government is going to cost a lot of money to get them over from private sector. So aggregate demand going here causes inflation. That's called the classical range. What's this middle range called?
Intermediate?
Intermediate. Now, this intermediate range is where we assume we usually are. In all the graphs I've been drawing today, the ones I drew earlier with aggregate demand and aggregate supply and all these shifts we did, those ones are basically we just assume we're always in this range. So on the AP test, we ignore this range, right? We kind of ignore this range and we just assume we're here unless the test specifically tells you we're somewhere else. So for example, if the AP test were to say, assume you're in the Keynesian range, and an increase in government spending increases aggregate demand, and you're still in the Keynesian range, then price level would go up. Output would go up, but price level would stay the same. That could be a question they could ask. Does it make sense?
Yes.
But they have to be extremely specific to tell you we're in this range. Does it make sense?
So they have to tell you exactly what range they're in.
They have to tell you where is the range, where did you shift, and where did you end up. So you have to make sure you know where are we and where do we end up? Because if you could say we're in the Keynesian range and we ended up over here and price level did go up, right? So it all depends on the question they ask. Now the truth is the AP test has moved away from asking a lot of Keynes classical questions. We just kind of assume that for better or worse, the economy is ran by a bunch of Keynesians anyways because in 2009 when the economy turned to crap, everyone became Keynesian, whether they were Republican or a Democrat or wherever they stood. The Austrians were the only people who kind of stuck with their guns and said, stop spending. But even most economists all kind of switched to, government spending we have to use. And so the AP test kind of sticks with that and says, okay, let's assume the government, spends and what would happen if they do. They don't usually ask you very many questions where you're assuming that the economy is just going to fix itself with no involvement whatsoever. Cool. Any other questions?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much. Everybody else, go ahead and call in. Now's the time. So I appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome. For the people who come in late, info@acdcleadership.com will get you to call me and you can talk to them. There's only 40 people watching, which is cool. Like, hey, I'm cool helping whoever. You guys help me by getting the Ultimate Review Packet, and I appreciate it. Also be sure to tell your teacher to get the Ultimate Review Packet for your class. It'll save you money. It'll save your students next year money. Next up, here we go. You are the big winner, and you are right there. Hello, how are you? Good. It's so nice to see you. My name is Jacob. I am so glad you're here. Let's transition you so everyone can see you. There you are.
Okay.
Oh, now you are. What's your name? What's your school? Where are you from?
Okay, my name is Erica. I'm from Toronto, Canada. I go to UTS.
Okay. All right. What's UTS?
UTS is like University of Toronto Schools.
Okay.
That's a part of U of T. It's weird.
Okay. That's awesome, though. That's great. So I lived in Ancaster 2 years ago. I lived in Ancaster for a year in Canada. Yeah. I'm still here. Okay.
Try that again. Hold
Okay, so how can I help you? What are you're taking the AP test, right? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Canada's pretty far. I think that's why we're losing her. Uh-oh. Oh, no. And I'm so sorry. I had to drop the call. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But we've got to move on. If you want to try calling, and then you can try. We can see if we can get you back up and running. Yeah. Mr. Clifford is a legend. I appreciate that, Joseph. Thank you. Seriously. Thank you. All right, next person to call in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Who's it going to be? Who is it going to be? Now it's weird. I'm sorry, guys. I wish there was a better system. It would be great if you had kind of like a line. There you go. All right. This is the one. Hello?
I'm back.
Yeah! You got back in. Thank you. All right, so go ahead, talk to me. What's your question?
So my question is, like the appreciation, depreciation of like currencies in the foreign exchange market.
Yes. Well, were you here? Were you just there when we covered? I just covered a bunch of them a few seconds ago. How long have you been here for?
Like just now.
Oh no, I'm sorry. So I literally just covered, and I did them really well. I'm trying to find it. I dropped my papers down here. I just covered them like pretty darn well. So just go back and watch that over again later. Ask me a different question about something else, because I want to make sure I get as many people as much stuff as possible.
I'm trying to think. Hold on.
It's okay. I'll give you time to think about it.
Macro question?
Well, yeah, macro.
Okay. I honestly can't think of one.
I'm sorry. So I'm sorry for cutting you short like that, but I had just covered foreign exchange like really well, okay? But thank you so much for calling in, okay? Bye-bye. Ooh, that disappeared on me. I was just about to click on you. Sorry, whoever these people are. There it is. Next one in. Hey, you're the big winner. Hello, how are you?
Hi.
How are you doing?
Good.
Good, good. All right, you're on screen. Everybody can see you. What's your name? What's your school? Where are you from? Let's talk.
I'm Helena Austin. I've been in here for a while.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I like had my A-push class, and I've already taken the test. We were watching Shrek during it, so I just plugged in headphones and was listening to the live stream.
Okay. Oh, at school, but now you're home.
Yeah, but
Oh.
now I'm home.
Okay.
And I've been trying to connect forever, and it's taking some time. But yeah, I was wondering first of all how much the circular flow diagram comes up on the actual test.
Yes, that's a great question. They'll never ask you to draw it. They've never had you draw it. But concept-wise, they'll ask you things like there's some terms you need to know. So understand who does what in the circular flow, that businesses supply resources, businesses demand resources and individuals supply them, and that consumers demand products and businesses supply them. So understand that concept. How about transfer payments? Not to quiz you, but do you know what transfer payments are?
Isn't it between like investors and like the bank?
No, that's a good guess though. So transfer payments are when the government pays people and not for like a good or service. So like a teacher, your teacher is paid by the government, and so that counts towards, that counts towards GDP. But a transfer payment is like welfare or a subsidy where the government gives a business or an individual money for nothing, and just like Social Security. Here you go. Here's money. That's a transfer payment. That's the kind of term you might see on the AP test that's connected to the circular flow, but not like knowing the circular flow won't give it to you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but yeah, understanding the idea of the circular flow, you know, I got a 3-minute long video seeing it over again. Probably do everything you need to answer those questions.
Okay.
What's your second question?
Can you like show how to do the crowding out effect?
Yeah, of course I can. Of course I can. Let me switch over to graph mode real quick. So crowding out concept-wise is actually one of the most like often asked concepts. They'll ask the definition, like what is crowding out all the time. But graph-wise, they usually use loanable funds. How do you feel about the loanable funds market?
Pretty good.
Cool. So that's the quantity for loans. This is the real interest rate. What's the demand look like?
It's downward.
Downward sloping supply?
It's straight line.
No, not vertical. That's the money market. Yeah. So it's upward sloping. So a good rule of thumb, just remember in macro, all demand curves are downward sloping. So some students like get confused because they take micro as well. This right here is the quantity of loans, and this right here is the real interest rate. All right, so that's the key graph. This is called the loanable funds graph. So the key to understanding this is knowing what demand and supply is. So who demands a loan? So if you heard someone say, "Oh, I demanded a loan," what kind of person is that?
Isn't that the banks?
That's a good question. See, that's important because if you think it's the banks, you actually might get the wrong answers. So do banks demand loans or do banks supply loans?
They supply.
Right. So supply needs to be by banks, and banks are lenders. So I'll write up here. This is lenders. Right? And I'm also going to write the word savers. So people who save their money and put it in banks allows more money to be supplied. Banks supply loans and lenders supply loans. And usually banks and lenders are the same institution. You want to go get a car loan, you go to a bank and they'll lend you money. They supply loans. Make sense? But if you say that I'm a bank and I demand someone to borrow, I demand the loan to give to somebody, that messes you up. Demands by who?
The savers.
Nope, savers was up here.
Oh, the demand is the people putting their, like, getting the loan.
Yeah, borrowers, yeah. Demand is by borrowers. So the people who are getting a loan, so borrowers, also called creditors, you might hear that term creditors, or the term investors. Investors is somebody who takes out a loan to buy machines, tools, and factories. So yes, those are the two things. Now, the government, when they deficit spend, and this is the idea of crowding out, when the government increases government spending and they deficit spend. So what's deficit spend mean?
That they like increase their spending and like lower their taxes.
Yeah, they're spending more than their tax revenue. So they're spending more and they have to do what?
Well, they're gonna to get back to normal.
No, just to if I spend $10 trillion and I only brought in $2 trillion of tax revenue, what do I have to do to pay for the extra money? I have to borrow, right? I have to borrow, which is right there. So the government borrows, which means they're increasing the demand for loanable funds, right? And when the government borrows and does that, they're going to raise that real interest rate. Now, here's the key. When the real interest rate goes up, this is the real interest rate goes up because the government did all that borrowing, that would cause investment to go down, right? People are going to invest less because now it's more expensive to take out a loan. And so this is the idea of what again? Crowding out. Crowding out is the idea that the government, when they deficit spend, increases government spending, increases interest rates, and it basically gets in the way of investors and consumers of borrowing money and buying more things and machines and tools and factories. That concept, crowding out, here's just the definition. The idea is this, right? The government borrows, increasing interest rates, decreasing investment. But graphically, it's usually shown through the loanable funds market, basically focusing on a raise in interest rates. Make sense?
Yeah, perfect.
Cool. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Do you need anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate you getting the ultimate review packet. Did your teacher get it or did you get it? Just you?
I got it. My teacher doesn't really know about this, but I've stressed it to my class, and a lot of us be using it for review for tests.
Thank you so much. Tell your teacher to take it. I got some new resources. Please tell him.
Perfect.
Thank you. Bye-bye. That was fun. Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm sure several of you have been like her. You're kind of patiently trying to call in. I can't hit everybody, but I can get as many as I possibly can. So thank you for getting the packet, and thank you for watching. Next person's going to chime in here in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, here we go. It's almost perfect timing. Yay! Hello, how are you?
Okay.
Cool. Turn the audio real quick off on your computer as we're doing this. Yeah. Awesome. So right now, let's get you on the screen so everyone can see you. Kind of an awkward thing here, but there it is. All right, you are on the screen. So what's your name, where you're from, and what school?
My name's Faith. I'm from Virginia, and I'm from Osborne Park High School.
All right, cool. And who's your teacher?
Mr. DeRosa.
Cool. Did she have Mr. or Mrs.?
Mr.
Mr. Did he get the packet, or did you buy the packet yourself?
He got it.
He did? Okay, cool. I appreciate it. Say thank you. Give him a hug next time you see him. He's not a hugger. Is he a hugger type of guy?
No.
No? Give a high five?
Maybe.
Handshake? Give me a handshake from Mr. Clifford and say, hey, I spoke to Mr. Clifford. He appreciates you getting the packet. Seriously, thank you so much.
Okay.
Cool. All right, let's hear it. What's your question?
Okay, so I know you went over some of this earlier, but the appreciation and depreciation of currency.
Yes.
I don't get like how to tell based on like the shifters like why it would appreciate or depreciate.
That's a great question. I'm trying to find the graph, the paper I had that I was drawing it all on. Oh, it's right here. So I'm going to switch over to graph mode. So excuse me for a second. So the question you're asking is a great question. How do we know it appreciates or depreciates? Earlier we drew this graph, if you remember, and we said if inflation in Canada is higher, then this is what happens to the dollar. We're analyzing dollars. If the price goes up, that's appreciation. It's that simple. So if the price, so think of it this way. Let's put some numbers in here. Let's say, and we're not going to be realistic. This is not realistic for actual Canadian versus American dollars. Let's say you got 1 Canadian dollar for 1 American dollar. So that's the exchange rate, okay? And then now you get 20 Canadian dollars for 1 American dollar, right? That means the price of dollars has now increased. And the price means the dollar has appreciated because now you get more Canadian dollars compared to what you did before. Before I only got 1 Canadian dollar, and now I get 20 Canadian dollars when I give the foreign exchange 1 American dollar. So that means the dollar appreciates. Now, whenever the dollar appreciates, that means the Canadian dollar has to depreciate. It's that simple. So it's really on AP test questions. I don't have one available, but on AP test questions they'll have like multiple choice, and they'll say, okay, what will happen to the American dollar? What happened to Canadian dollar? And they'll say, appreciate, depreciate. Cross those ones out because that's not even possible. You can't have the American dollar depreciate and the Canadian dollar depreciate relative to each other at the same time. It doesn't work that way.
Okay.
Did that answer your question, kind of?
Kind of. It's more of like, like when the shifters of like the changes in tastes.
Yes.
Why would tourists going to one place cause that one place's currency to appreciate?
That's a good question. So if let's just make up name a country you've been to other than the United States.
I haven't been out of the country.
Okay, so I didn't go out of the country until I was 16 years old, so it's okay. It's okay. I'm going to Mexico not too soon. So Mexico has pesos. If Americans all decide to go to, let's do it the other way because actually let's do it the other way. Let's say Americans all want to go to Mexico for. Let me switch you back to screen mode really quick so we can see each other. Let's say Americans all want to go to Mexico. That means Americans are going to need to buy Mexican pesos. And as they demand more of those Mexican pesos, that will cause the value of those pesos to increase. Anytime someone wants something, that'll increase the price of it. I want that. I want that. If I want more ice cream, that'll increase the price of ice cream because one person says, I want it. And we'll bid the price up for it. And if there's a bunch of people in line who want to buy Mexican pesos, a bunch of Americans are like, I want pesos. Well, I'll pay you this. Well, I'll pay you this. I'll pay you this. We all steadily increase the price of those pesos. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the idea of pesos would appreciate and the dollar would
appreciate.
There you go. It's that simple.
So anytime there's like inflation in one country, their currency would appreciate?
No.
Depreciate.
Depreciate, and the other one would appreciate. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
I mean, yeah, you can memorize it that way if you want. But yeah. All right. Thank you so much for calling. Have a good one.
Thank you.
All right. Bye. Fun, fun, fun till Daddy takes the T-bird away. All right. Who's up next? Hope you guys are having fun. Take his practice exams. Prist is supposed to be the harder than the test. Anyways, thank you guys all for watching. We're going for another 15 minutes, so you have questions. Let's hear them. You guys are calling in with your questions. Like I said, 3, 2, 1. You're the big winner! Hey, how you doing?
Hey.
How are things? Go ahead and turn down the audio on your computer.
So I think there's like a bit of lag here.
There's totally a bit of lag. Yeah, there's 100%. There's definitely serious
I'll
lag.
just turn off the video and just listen on here.
Perfect.
Okay. So I have a question on the. So we always talk about like how when the interest rate falls and increases investment in the aggregate graphs.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was wondering how a falling interest rate affects like consumption. Is that like another part of GDP?
Totally. Totally. So, I don't even show you I need to go to graph mode. So there's some key relationships. I made a live stream on Friday. Did you get a chance to see that one yet?
Yeah.
Cool. I forget where, but somewhere in there I had a list of 15 relationships where I said, okay, this causes this causes that. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
That is absolutely key. If you know the key relationships, honestly, you could probably answer at least 15 out of the 60 multiple choice questions just by knowing those key relationships.
Okay.
So when interest rates go up, right, that will cause investment to go down, and the other way around as well, right? So these are inversely related. So there it is, right? So inversely related, interest rate up, investment goes down. But that also causes consumption does the same exact thing. So if interest rates go up and it's harder to take out a loan, then businesses will take out less loans and consumers will take out less loans for like cars and stuff that as well. I usually just focus on investment because that's the more important of the two. But you're right, it also would affect consumption spending, no doubt about it, 100% as well. Make sense?
Yeah, so
Good.
How does like the marginal propensity to save, is that part of what affects consumption?
Yeah, it would. Yeah. So how much so if investment goes down, how much will consumer spending go up? Depends on if what is the marginal propensity to consume. If people are saving a lot and they're consuming less, then that would have less of that multiplier effect. Usually they don't connect those concepts with this concept. Usually they're kind of disjointed, and they'll say something like, let's say consumer spending goes up by $50 billion or $50 million, and the marginal propensity to consume is 0.8, and they'll set up the numbers, and they go, okay, so they don't really combine those concepts I showed you. They usually separate them and say, okay, people spend this amount, here's how much they consume, my marginal propensity to consume, how much total spending could possibly create. So let's actually do one of these, make sure we're on the same page and see how we do. Let's say, and let's keep it simple and just be dumb. $50 increased consumer spending. If the marginal propensity to consume is 0.8, how much is the spending multiplier, simple spending multiplier?
So that would be marginal propensity to save is 0.8.
Consume is 0.8.
Okay, so then 5.
Yes, the marginal propensity to save, I messed that up. Marginal propensity to save must be 0.2. There it is, 0.2. And so the 1 over the marginal propensity to save is the multiplier. And so it's 1 over 0.2, which you're right, is 5. So $50 in the economy would become how much total maximum change in spending?
So 50 times 5 would 250.
250. Now 250, the reason the AP test does this is because 250 is the maximum change in spending from this scenario, assuming all sorts of things that are not realistic. There's no leakages. No money goes overseas. No money is lost. No money is destroyed. No money goes somewhere else. And so this is a very, very academic concept that's, economists like to teach, young people and say it's real, but it's really not that real. the concept in general is true. If people save a whole lot, for example, there's two parts of fiscal policy. What are the two parts of fiscal policy?
The taxes and government spending.
So if we, yeah, exactly. So if expansionary fiscal policy, what are the two options we could use?
If you want to expand, you decrease taxes and increase government spending.
Perfect. So if we did that, increase government spending and decrease taxes, how much that becomes an economy depends on this multiplier idea. I mean, no economist can actually calculate it down to like the dollar, but concept-wise, it's important because if we lower taxes and people save it all, if people save all, like, oh, it's lower taxes, and people save all of it, that's not going to help the economy very much because they need to spend it. So one of the things you want is when we're using expansionary fiscal policy, we want to give a tax cut and say, listen, go, spend it, and that becomes somebody else's income, and that expands the economy. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, so I also had like another question about like the Phillips curve.
Yes.
The short run aggregate supply. So like, are they like very much very much correlated?
Yes, totally. The shape of one is built because of the shape of the other one. So yeah. So I'm going to switch over to graph mode real quick so everybody else can see this as well. So here we go. You're asking about GDP price level with aggregate demand and the aggregate supply curve, short run aggregate supply curve, and then the Phillips curve, which is inflation and unemployment, downward sloping, short run Phillips curve. So for example, if the economy is here and here, let's call that point A and call that point A, right? That's where the economy is. And let's put a vertical line and say we're in the long run aggregate supply curve, right? And we can put a long run curve here as well. Call this the long run Phillips curve. If aggregate demand were to go up, let me switch colors. If aggregate demand were to go up here, that puts us point B. Where would point B be on this other graph?
Sorry, I'm like waiting for the video.
No, you're fine. It's okay. So point B would be an inflationary gap. Where would an inflationary gap be on the Phillips curve?
Inflationary gap. So it would be high inflation, low unemployment.
There you go. Point B is right there. We'd have high price level, but high output means low unemployment. There's point B. If aggregate demand were to fall, let's say AD here, and we end up here at, switch colors again, at point C, then point C would be right here. What concept is that? Well, that's a recessionary gap.
Yeah.
So yeah, the shifting of the aggregate demand curve creates the short-run Phillips curve, right? So yeah, they're related, totally related, but they're not like something you would dot over. You wouldn't go, okay, dot over sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's not what they are, but they're totally related, okay?
Yeah, so I also have a question about...
Only two questions, not to cut you off, but I know there's other people who are waiting, okay? Is that cool?
All right.
Is that me? I don't want to screw you over. But I know there's like 4 people that kept calling in over and over again, and I don't want to leave them hanging. Is that cool?
All right, fine. That's okay.
Well, what's it about so I know in general so I can know for the next person?
It's like the difference, because some things shift long run aggregate supply and some things shift short run aggregate supply. So I was wondering like the difference.
Yes. I covered that in the live stream, but you're totally right. I'll make sure to talk about, you're talking about economic growth when the curve shifts and doesn't curve. Like when it shifts back to normal and when the whole thing shifts out. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like the differences. Yeah.
I will cover it for sure. Thanks for calling. I appreciate it, man. Thank you. See ya. I cut him off short. I didn't mean to. I just know there's some other people who are waiting. So I want to make sure that as many people as possible. See, I told you. Here we go. You are the big winner. You are in. And who are you? Oh, I lost him. I guess they're not the big winner. They're not a big loser either. You're just a person. So people are calling in. I will cover the long run. By the end of this thing, I'll cover that long run. Hello. How are you? Hello? I'm sorry. Hello, how are you? This is Jacob Clifford.
Hello.
Yeah, there you are. How are you doing?
How are you? Doing good yourself?
I'm doing good. So I'm going to put you on the screen in a second. Turn down the audio if you could on my computer, your computer, And let's get you on screen so we can show your face to the millions of viewers at home, which are more like 39 people. How you doing? What's your name? Where are you from?
Well, I'm Gabriel, and I'm from California.
Oh, yeah. Where?
Bosco Tech. I'm in downtown, or Rosemead, the city of Rosemead. There you go.
All right. Very cool. Well, I'm glad you're calling. How can I help?
So, quick question.
Oh, no. I'm so sorry. I cut you off. Oh, no. I'm such a jerk. Okay. Everyone stop. Don't call in. I know you want to. Don't do it. Only that dude's going to call in. All right? I messed up. That was me. Sorry. I'm going to have to hang up on this person if it's not that same dude. There you are. Sorry. That was my bad.
Sorry about that.
All right. Go for it, Gabriel.
The question was the correlation between interest rates and bond prices.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's just a memory thing. Just remember. I mean, there's not much I can tell you. They're inversely related. So when interest rates go up, bond prices go down. When interest rates go down, bond prices go up. Concept-wise, it's all about what do people prefer. So if interest rates were to go, let's say they go up, right? So there's certain bonds that have already been issued. There's bonds out there right now. There's bonds out there for 10%. There's bonds out for 2%. There's bonds all out there. And if interest rates start going up now, and people would prefer, obviously, a new interest rate at a higher rate than the older ones that are a lower interest rate, right? So I'd rather have a higher rate of return. Yeah. And so if people prefer those higher interest rates, then the price of those other bonds, those other ones that aren't as valuable would fall. People wouldn't want to pay for very much of them. So all you got to remember is they're inversely related. I mean, seriously, I don't tell my students to memorize very many things. I want them to really understand. But this is one of those ones you just memorize it. Interest rate goes up, bond prices go down, always inversely related. Cool? Okay. Any other questions?
I'm not sure if you covered this already, but bank statements.
We did. I did it earlier. I did it towards the middle of this thing. And I have a video. Take a look at the video. It's practice bank balance sheets. I have 3 times I practice over and over again, okay? Okay. Hey, it was a pleasure talking to you, man. Hey, did you get the Ultimate Review packet, or did your teacher get it for you?
My teacher. He actually got it for me.
Hey, say thank you to your teacher. Seriously, I appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. Okay, who's up next? Let's go back to this. I don't know if you guys are having fun. I did. I mean, I had fun. It's weird because it's like I'm. Here it is. Who is this big winner? 3, 2, 1. This person's having a hard time connecting. I'm not sure who you are, but it's having a hard time connecting. I'm so sorry. I think I'm going to have to drop you 3065069. I apologize. Hello, 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 hello! How are you? You're the big winner. How are things?
I'm good.
Good, good, good. My name is Jacob. You are on screen for everyone to see. What's your name? Where you? I hung up again! No! I'm so sorry. No call. Don't call. Let her call. Let her call. You'd be surprised how hard this is. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. This is actually way harder than you think. So if you're not the nice lady who I just saw, I'm going to have to hang up. I don't mean to. I'm so sorry. There you are. I'm so sorry I hung up on you. I apologize.
No problem.
All right. So let's hear where you're from and who are you? Let's hear it.
Okay, my name is Ishka Gupta. I'm from Fargo, North Dakota, and my school is Davies High School.
All right.
And then my teacher is Mr. Stephen Orell.
All right. Very cool. Awesome. Very cool. Did you buy the packet, or did your teacher get your class together by the packet?
Oh, no, I bought the packet.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Please tell your teacher. Seriously, though, if it was helpful, tell your teacher, like, oh, it was super helpful, and tell them to get the packet for their students next year.
Yeah, he always encourages all of us to buy the packet.
Okay.
Talk about your videos all the time.
Okay, good. I appreciate it. All right, let's hear it.
Okay, so I know what monetary and fiscal policy are, but when a question asks
policy would reduce a recession? How do you answer those types of questions?
Well, usually you're talking about multiple choice questions. You're not talking about free response, right?
Yeah, multiple choice.
Yeah. So the multiple choice, basically, you got to. So for example, let me switch over to graph mode real quick. The AP test, it's a little. They have a tendency to ask questions in the same sort of way over and over and over again. The kind of question you're seeing is one they say, assume we have a recession. So there's a recession in the economy is doing bad. There's high unemployment. Which combination of fiscal and monetary policy? So basically, you're trying to find out which ones for fiscal policy will do two things. What are the two things of fiscal policy to get out of a recession?
They will increase government spending and decrease taxes.
There you go. So you're looking for the one that says increase government spending, or the one that looks for decreasing taxes. If they say decrease government spending, you cross that one out. That's not it. If they say increasing taxes, you cross that out. That's not it. Not at all, right? So monetary policy, what are the three things that the Fed can do to get out of a recession?
Buy bonds.
Okay.
Increase the discount rate and decrease the reserve requirement.
Decrease the reserve requirement. There you go. So basically, you're looking for the answer that combines these things. So one will say increase government spending, but they sell bonds. You cross that up, right? So it's half right, but not entirely right. So basically, you're just trying to make sure to find the one that does this, right? I'm not sure if that's the question you're asking, but that's the question I just answered. Is that what you're asking about?
Yeah, that's basically what I was asking.
Okay. There are other questions, though, where they have asked questions like, let's assume the government does a bunch of government spending and to try to close a gap, but the Fed doesn't want inflation. So, for example, watch this. Here's price level and GDP, and we have aggregate demand, aggregate supply, and an increase in government spending would shift aggregate demand, which would normally cause inflation, right? So price level would go up. You with me?
Yeah.
Cool. That's true, yes, but you might see a question that says, well, what could the Fed do to counteract that inflation? In other words, which one of these policies, monetary policies, could actually cause inflation to go back down? And then the answer would be the opposite of all these, right? Then they'd be saying they could sell bonds, they could raise the discount rate, or they can raise the reserve requirement, because that would increase government spending would go up, but this would cause aggregate demand not to go up as much, so it would limit inflation. So really, there's no one way to say you have to answer it this way. It depends on the individual question. If the individual question says, what combination, then find the one that will, no doubt about it, definitely increase aggregate demand. If they're asking for, how could you counteract a problem of another policy, then you would, answer it a different way. Cool?
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And
cool.
Also, I just have a question about required reserves.
Yeah.
So all things that go into a bank, are they all subject to required reserves? In the sense, like, if a person on the street goes and deposits $100, and the required reserve rate was 10%, then
yes.
10% will go into required reserves.
Yes.
But is that the same for like government spending? Like if government spending increases like by $500?
No, that's a different concept entirely. Government spending has to do with the spending multiplier. You have a good question though. The good question is, so you're talking about this idea of assets and liabilities on a bank balance sheet, right? That's kind of what you're referring to. So demand deposits, I'll actually write it out. Demand deposits are how much people deposit in the bank, and that's a liability because the bank has to pay that off, right? With those demand deposits, there's two things they can do. There's some required reserves they have to hold, and there's excess reserves which they can loan out if they want to, right? So if someone deposits $100 and the reserve requirement is 10%, right? Someone deposits $100, so this goes up by $100. This goes up by $10, and then they can loan out $90 of excess reserves. If the Fed's doing government spending, that's really not affecting this. I mean, you could work this out, but that's higher than your pay grade. That's nothing that they ask in the actual AP test. Keep in mind, though, there's usually something else on this other column. Can you think of anything else they put on this column under liabilities?
Loans?
Loans would be on this side. Usually, this is the loans that the bank has loaned out. So with the $100, they loan out a certain amount. But yeah, the bank could have borrowed in this case. So you could put a loan on this side. most of the time the AP test, they do owner's equity. So let's say owner's equity, and let's just change this up and say is another $100. Owner's equity is like how much ownership the people who own the bank have, how much money they have in this bank. Only demand deposits need to have required reserves, not owner's equity. So the idea that if something happened and these owners ended up getting some sort of cash money from something else, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to hold that in required reserves. Only the amount that goes in here. So in other words, if you calculate this side as 200 and a student goes, well, you have to hold 20% because that's the total, that's 10% of the total. You don't do that. You don't count owner's equity. Only demand deposits go in required reserves.
Okay.
Cool? Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much for calling in. I appreciate it. We are running out of time. In fact, we're out of time. This is going to be the last caller. Whoever this person is the last caller for this session. Of course, don't leave the people who are going anywhere. Let me know if this was worth your time and your energy. I had fun. I've never done anything like this before. I thought it was pretty cool, even though there were so few of you who came. I'm still super glad that you did it. So next caller is the last caller. There it is. You, the person who's having a hard time connecting, I'm so sorry. I don't know why, but for some reason, yeah, it's acting up. I'll give you some time here, but it's not working. I'm sorry, that person. It's nothing against you. All right, big winner here. Hello, hello, hello.
I got it.
You got him all right. How are you? Go ahead and turn off my computer's audio real quick.
Oh, okay. Hello.
How are you doing?
Mikey, go turn the light.
How are you doing there?
Good, and yourself?
I'm doing well. What's your name? Where are you at?
My name is James Huerta, and no poor connection. No. Oh.
I can still hear you.
Okay, yeah. My name is James Huerta, and I'm from California.
Where?
Oh, in Rosemead, Bosco Tech. My friend just gotten a call too.
Okay. Are you guys in class with your teacher?
Yeah, we're in class with our teacher right now.
Uh-oh, we're losing him. Oh man, I'm sorry guys. I'm gonna have to pass it on. Unfortunately, it's got a bad connection. This other person really wants to get in here. Hello, hello. This is the same person who's trying to connect earlier. So whoever this person is, 3065069, I'm sorry, it's having a real hard time chomping on this. I don't know why, but it is. The gentleman I just spoke to, I apologize also that I had to jump out of there. Just technology, I guess, issues. It might be my end. I don't even know. So, yeah. Waiting. You know what? As people are calling in, maybe I'll show you that whole idea of the growth curve thing. Yeah, I'm trying to get to you, bro. I am. This person keeps calling in, and it's just not working. All right, people keep calling in. Longer I gotta supply. All right, this will be the last thing I'm going to do here. Are you there? Oh, no, it said call failed. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm going to shut down my FaceTime. I apologize for that, but let me show you one last concept. I guess I'm not going to shut down my FaceTime. Please don't call anymore. I don't mean to be mean, but let's not call. Simply because it's going to be... Okay, so let's get over to screen mode one last time. Nope, graph mode one last time. One more time. Ooh. All right. So here we go. The question that was asked earlier, the gentleman had asked about the growth. When consumption goes up, consumer spending goes up, and when investment goes up, it seems like it would have the exact same thing happen on the graph. And it does not. That's not how it works. So if consumer spending goes up, aggregate demand goes up, right? And in the long run, wages go up. And so aggregate supply will shift to the left. And we'll go right back to where we were in the long run. So in the long run, price level goes up and quantity stays exactly the same in the long run, right? This is the idea of the long run adjustments, right? Over on this side, because this is investment, aggregate demand is going to go up, yes, because investment shifts aggregate demand, but aggregate supply shifts to the right, and so does a long run aggregate supply. So price level looks like it stays the same, but quantity goes up in the long run. Now, it doesn't really stay the same. It's indeterminate, but concept-wise, you need to understand there's more growth because there's more capital. If people want more of your stuff, that doesn't mean you can produce more of it. That's not how it works. It means that you can produce more in the short run, but not in the long run. But if we invest, we have more machines, tools, and factories, then we can produce more, and the long run aggregate supply curve shifts to the right, which is the same as the PPC curve shifting outward. Right? So this concept and this concept are the same idea. I went over this pretty much in a lot of detail in the live stream that I did for last Saturday. So take a look at the macro live stream. I posted that on my channel 3 days ago. So take a look at that. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you were part of the inaugural Mr. Clifford, first time ever experience calling in students, talking to you guys. Seriously, it was a blast talking to you. I really, really appreciate it. Special thank you to Bailey for being the very first one on this thing. Super cool. These people who, anybody here, I really hope it was worth your time. I mean it. Please, 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 before you leave, do me a favor. The ultimate review packet I sell to students, and I thank you so much for getting it. It would be awesome if your teacher got it with your students as well, like found a way to get you guys to get it. I give a bulk discount, and it's going to help them, and it's going to help you, or it's going to help the class behind you. So if you liked my ultimate review packet and you thought it was helpful, you like this video and my other videos, please, please, please tell your teacher, say, listen, this is actually worth your time and your energy. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for helping me by getting the packet, and I hope this video helped you guys. So I'm out of here, and good luck on those exams, and get ready, okay? Until next time.